Chapter 655, Relations. Gu Yongdao had not expected Bihan to be so direct, but he also felt puzzled. Put generously, people like Bihan were proud. They usually looked down on everyone and thought highly of themselves as the center of the world. Gu Yongdao had only known that Bihan had led Xin Battalion and left Xian Kong Temple. But he still felt it incomprehensible that he had decided to follow this youth. He then looked at Gongsun Cha standing at the side and Vermilion Bird Camp. Swa Mo already had 2 top battalions. While this kind of strength could not rival the 4 great sects, it was much greater than the normal intermediate and small sections. Puzzlement, shock, confusion, these emotions mixed in his mind. With the 2 of you here, there's no need for me. Gu Yongdao said with disdain directed at himself. While this was just a courtesy response, it reflected Gu Yongdao's attitude. He did not know how big Swa Mo's factions was, but he had 2 top battle generals. If he joined them, he would only be gilding the lily and it would be difficult for him to earn a position in the inner circle. His intelligence and cunning were greater than pure battle generals such as Gongsun Cha and Bihan to have been able to gather such a group of people in such difficult circumstances. While Bihan was not skilled in scheming, he was perceptive. When he heard Gu Yongdao say this, he did not try to persuade any further, and said coolly, "But in the future, Shi Xian will not be tolerant of you." The words hit the sore spot in Gu Yongdao's heart. While to outsiders he looked to have a great reputation in the Xiuzhou world and he was the top battle general from Shi Xian, the higher-ups from Xian Xian would not support him. Ultimately he was someone who had been categorized as something to be abandoned. To them he was an eyesore. The greater his reputation was, the more terrified the Shi Xian higher-ups became of him. While the higher-ups spoke good words on the surface and appeared understanding, Gu Yongdao knew that it was just to lull him into a false sense of security. Because of this, he was willing to fight in the Mo territories which carried great danger rather than return to the sect. It was most likely that if he returned to the sect, what awaited him was loss of his command. Gu Yongdao was someone who was pragmatic. After a moment of silence, he smiled freely and his expression was not disguised at all. He said openly, "The matters of the future will wait until the future. No one can have smooth sailing all the time. It is enough to have gained something from this trip." Swa Mo and Gongsun Cha couldn't help but admire this. Even the icy look in Bihan's eyes melted slightly. This little brother heard that a marshal came, is he? Gu Yongdao had a questioning look in his eyes. "We accidentally killed him." Swa Mo tried to keep his face normal and said with slight embarrassment, "Actually, it had been a Gui that had killed him." Gu Yongdao was struck dumb by Swa Mo's expression and even more so by the words. He stammered out, "Accidentally killed." He was not the only one affected, the commanders around him gaped as though they were seeing ghosts. N. Swa Mo nodded repeatedly. Gu Yongdao's expression froze for a moment before he said, "Brother Shao, as expected, the youth become heroes." He said, "as expected," twice. He didn't know what words to use to describe his mood right now. He couldn't see any indications that the other was joking. He also knew that Xiao Mo Gu would not lie to him about this matter. The event would have just occurred and there were also many people present. He would only need to briefly investigate to find the truth of the matter. And when he connected this to the scene of Bihan had been slaughtering Mo, this answer seemed reasonable. If it wasn't that the marshal had been killed, would the marshal would have tolerated his battalion being culled like sheep? All the evidence seemed to indicate that Xiao Mo Gu's words were not false. But that was a marshal, not a dog, a marshal. He was equivalent to a Fanshu Xiuzhou. Even in Shi Xian, one of the 4 great sects of the Xiuzhou world, Fanshu Xiuzhou were rare. They either spent their years in seclusion, or they were out traveling the world. But any Fanshu Xiuzhou was a strategic power for a sect. Gu Yongdao had fought against the Mo and he had a deeper understanding of the Mo than normal Xiuzhou. In the Mo world, the martial level was the top power. They were the most strongest battle generals and strongest experts. Each of them was a person that could affect the state of the 100 Savage realm. The fall of any marshal would be news that would cause all of the Mo world to shake. This was even more of a bomb than any Jia getting taken over. Zhou Mo suddenly became even more mysterious and unfathomable in his eyes. Guliang Dao kept his calm, but the commanders around him couldn't help but become cautious. Up until now, while the four major sects had obtained some gains, the Yaomai had not been seriously harmed. For the Mo, the fall of Marshal Yu would be greatest loss up until now. Guliang Dao quickly recovered from his shock. He was filled with curiosity and puzzlement, but he forced these feelings down. It would be impolite to pry so deeply. He changed the topic. Where is everyone planning to go now? To Nether Springs Jia. Zhou Mo did not conceal this. The other had come to help. No matter what the reason for that was, it was a debt. Also, he could see that Guliang Dao was an open-minded and generous person. Nether Springs Jia. Guliang Dao was slightly shocked, but he did not ask why Zhou Mo and the others were going to Nether Springs Jia. He said after some thought, Nether Springs Jia is in an extremely deep region of the Nether realm. It is far away, and there are many powers along the way. It will not be an easy journey. Zhou Mo nodded, feeling the same. Yes. Guliang Dao took something out of his ring and handed it to Zhou Mo. He said with a hint of self-mockery, while I am just pretending to follow orders, this little brother has to still conquer a few Jia in order to satisfy my sect. I cannot go with Brother Shao. This Jia map is something that this little brother gained as a spoil from a fight. It does not belong to my sect. The information about the 100 Savage Nether realms and all of its Jia are marked on this map. I hope this will be of some help to Brother Shao. Zhou Mo's expression changed. The other's expression was sincere. It was a small item, but its value was several thousand jingshi and was even more valuable to Zhou Mo. This person was cunning but open and generous in how he treated people. He really is a hero. Zhou Mo's expression became stern and he put away the mirth in his expression. He bowed towards Guliang Dao. Many thanks, Big Brother Gu. This little brother's true name is Zhou Mo and I have used the pseudonym Xiao Mo Gu while moving around in the Mo territories. Big Brother Gu, call me Xiao Mo. Guliang Dao laughed and said, names are small matters and not worth a mention. Brother, be careful. The Mo never lack for vicious people and have a deep-seated hatred for us Shouja. Brother Zhou has to be careful on this journey. You also killed a marshal and your identity as a Shouja will now most likely revealed. Now that you have become well known, the trip will no longer be a peaceful one. Big Brother Gu is right. Zhou Mo's expression also became grave. After the fight today, his identity as a Shouja would most likely be unable to be concealed. The interested could be detected from the gazes of the survivors of Great Peace City. Their gazes were complex, filled with hate and gratefulness, but the most common emotion was fear. He suddenly said, this little brother has a matter, please, Big Brother Gu, help. What is it? Guliang Dao asked directly. These Mo have some relations to this little brother. Big Brother Gu, please allow them to live. Zhou Mo said. Guliang Dao nodded without thinking. All right. Many thanks, Big Brother Gu. Zhou Mo said gratefully. Guliang Dao shook his head and said, do not think of this brother as a bloodthirsty person. Fighting wars is a matter for battalions, what does it have to do with civilians? This brother has not fallen to such a low level. Also, after this sky-splitting calamity, the intermingling of Shouja, Yao, and Mo will not be able to be stopped. The heavens will it. There is no need for unnecessary killing. A hint of shock flashed through Zhou Mo's eyes. This Big Brother Gu of his was a very strong person as he had expected. It wasn't that Zhou Mo hadn't met people who recognized this, but it was not easy for the Great Four to admit this. Then they started chatting about other matters. Gu Liangdao quickly found that while Zhuemo was young, his vision of larger events was clear. Even though he had accomplished so much at such a young age, he did not let his ego interfere. Gu Liangdao's judgment of the state of affairs was a keen and experienced, something that a beginner like Zhuemo could not match. Just a few sentences would be enough to enlighten Zhuemo. Zhuemo finally understood why Big Brother Gu hadn't died under the pressure of the sect and had grown even more powerful. The two were very compatible and talked through the night. When the first thread of sunlight rose from the horizon, they seemed to wake up from a dream. Everyone knew that this was the time of separation. Zhuemo and the others had to go to Nether Springs Jia, and Gu Liangdao and his group had to return back to reinforce their battle lines. They received news that there were enemies harassing their front line. But the two sides were not picky people. They exchanged methods of contact and bid farewell. When he saw the figures of Gu Liangdao and the others disappear, Zhuemo finally turned his gaze away. The departure of Gu Liangdao's group caused the Mo survivors of Great Peace City to sigh in relief. When they heard that one of the newcomer battalions had been led by Gu Liangdao, they had been frightened half to death. In the eyes of many, Gu Liangdao was a god of slaughter. They hadn't expected Gu Liangdao to leave without even looking at them. Many people speculated that it had been Xiao Gu who had spoken on their behalf. Their emotions were more complex. Xiao Gu was a Shouja and was their enemy. But if it wasn't for Xiao Gu, the great majority of the people in Great Peace City would have died. Regardless of whether they admitted it aloud, they all knew this inside. Xiao Gu had saved their lives. But why was a person like this a Shouja? Many people had this conflicted thought. Zhuemo did not care. He did not have any bias for or against the Mo. He understood the hatred between the Mo and the Shouja. He could also guess what they were feeling, but he did not care. It did not matter to him whether they felt grateful or hated him. He had done these things not for them, but to stay true to himself. He did not pay attention to them, and ordered his subordinates to clean up the battlefield. With Zhuemo's personality, he naturally would not watch and allow so many of the spoils to slip by him. That wasn't little Mo Guess style. Due to Xiao Guess' presence, no one had dared to scavenge the spoils in the night. At this time, Princess Xia left the crowd. Chapter 656, Gu Liangdao's choice. Zhuemo was slightly surprised as he looked at that alluringly beautiful face. "Are you not afraid of me?" Zhuemo was puzzled. The other people looked at him with wariness and fear in their eyes, yet Princess Xia approached him as usual. Princess Xia smiled alluringly. "Why should I be afraid of you? Will you eat me?" Zhuemo was left speechless. Princess Xia's eyes moved and seemed mischievous. "I hadn't thought that you would know Gu Liangdao. But it is fortunate for us that you know him. Otherwise, this place would even have ruins left. However, you have to be careful. It is not good for your reputation as a Mo to be associated with Shouja. Which family are you really from? 10 Crow Celestial Apparatus is a very noble bloodline. Are you a descendant of the ancient families?" Her words were not spoken quietly, and she blinked playfully at Zhuemo. Listening to Princess Xia's words, many people showed expressions of relief. Princess Xia was right. How could someone that cultivated the 10 Crow Celestial Apparatus Mo physique be a Shouja? They had never heard of a Shouja that was able to cultivate the 10 Crow Celestial Apparatus Mo physique, much less reach the completion stage of the 10 Crow Celestial Domain. Thinking about it this way, everyone found the thought that Xiao Gu was a Shouja was absurd. All of the Mo present exhaled in relief. Everything would be alright if Xiao Gu was a Mo. As to his relations with Shouja, while it was something that was frowned upon, no one cared too much. Look at those Shouja, among them was the famed Gu Liangdao. They didn't feel that anything was wrong. Xiao Gu was extraordinary as expected, being familiar with other extraordinary people was expected. The common saying was birds of a feather, flocked together. Someone that the Tiger General of Xixian treated so respectfully, how could Xiao Mo Gu be a normal person? Unconsciously, the terror in their eyes weakened and transformed into respect. No matter where you were, people would respect the strong. Suo Mo's expression froze on his body. He now understood what it meant to make black into white. Princess Xia's silver tongue could make dead people become alive. Her speech was meant to help remove the suspicion people had of him. Even though it could not make everyone believe it. People such as Zhu Ke and a few others still had suspicion in their eyes, it was enough to fool the normal people. To them the 10-crow celestial apparatus was absolute proof. As to the Xiuzhe under Xiao Mo Ge's command, those were even easier to explain away. Xiao Mo Gu and Gu Yongdao had a good relationship, it would therefore be normal to have some Xiuzhe under his command. Looking at this battalion, the Mo were the primary corps. Looking at Princess Xia smiling as she spoke, Suo Mo knew that this woman had guessed his identity. However, he was still surprised that she had stepped out to help him. Suo Mo smiled but did not speak. In the eyes of everyone else, his silence and expression caused them to feel even more mystery from him. Xiao Mo Ge's origins were probably extraordinary as Princess Xia had said. Suo Mo set up Jinji and blocked off all sound. "Thanks," he said seriously. Princess Xia smiled beautifully. "How will you thank me?" Suo Mo scratched his head. "Speak." Princess Xia looked deeply at Suo Mo as though she wanted to say something, but when the words reached her mouth, it became, "Where are you preparing to go next?" "Nether Springs Jie." Suo Mo did not conceal it. "Nether Springs Jie." Princess Xia had a shocked expression. "That place will not be easy to get to." "Yes." Suo Mo nodded. Looking at the determination on Suo Mo's face, Princess Xia did not try to persuade him from his journey. She smiled and said, "Remember to visit me if you have the time, don't forget that you still owe me a favor." "Yes." Suo Mo responded with a serious expression. Detecting the seriousness in Suo Mo's tone, Princess Xia felt strangely happy. She suddenly asked, "Will you tell me your true name now?" As expected, she had seen through him. But for some reason, Suo Mo felt his mind relax. "Suo Mo. Suo Mo. Suo Mo." Princess Xia murmured and then she suddenly burst into laughter. "Xiao Mo Gu. Xiao Mo Gu, you're really a little hoodlum. Even your fake name is so stylish." Looking at Princess Xia arching back as she laughed, Suo Mo's mouth curled up. The laughter faded. Calm and a distance separated them. The two of them knew that after their farewells, it was unknown if or when they would meet again. Looking at this face that could not be said to be handsome, in this moment, Princess Xia suddenly had an impulse to throw away everything and run away with him to Nether Springs Jie. This impulse caused her determination to waver, but she quickly hid the thought deep inside. She thought of the wish she had made that night and her gaze became determined. She raised her face and smiled brightly like sunlight. "Hug me goodbye." Suo Mo stilled. He opened his arms and lightly embraced this woman that was so smart and he could not understand. "Have a peaceful journey." The murmur was like a breeze. She released her arms and her smile was bright. As one of the most popular topics in the Xiuzhe world at present, Gu Yongdao's every move attracted attention. In a short few days, the news of Gu Yongdao's interaction with Mo called Xiao Mo Gu had spread. The information on this Xiao Mo Gu was quickly discovered. This Xiao Mo Gu was not an unknown Mo. However, what puzzled people was that this Xiao Mo Gu had first become famous in the Yao territories. The prison-breaking battle and defeating Corps Commander Yu Heng. All those events had happened in the 10-finger prison. Yet the Xiao Mo Gu in these rumors was Mo, and this puzzled many people. Was this guy a Yao or a Mo? Some even suspected that there were two people with the same name, but as Xiao Mo Ge's almost unbelievable escapades came to light, this suspicion weakened. It was very unlikely that two experts who were both called Xiao Mo Gu had appeared at the same time. And when the Shuzha thought of the possibility there were two such talented Yamo, they were more willing to believe that it was one person. Of all the incidents, what was most eye-catching was Xiao Mo Gu had killed Marshal Yu. When many people read this, their first response was that their eyes had seen it wrong. Then, all kinds of information corroborated the accuracy of this news and it caused a great furor. But what was most controversial was that Gu Yongdao had helped Xiao Mo Gu. The rumor that the Tiger General of Xixian was in cahoots with the Mo spread, and once it did, it caused a wave of discussion. All kinds of insider information and speculation flew about. What was even more interesting was that Xixian was silent and did not publicly clarify the situation. Xixian's attitude caused those speculations to seem to be the truth. Was Gu Yongdao truly in cahoots with the Mo? Furious discussion filled the world. In a matter of days, the great hero fell off the pedestal and was spat upon by the world. Gu Yongdao's face was dark. The development of the situation had surpassed his expectations. In the shadows, there seemed to be a hand moving everything. Actually, he didn't need to guess to know who was doing this. The attitude of the sect told him everything. What he hadn't expected was that the sect would be in such a hurry to act against him during a time of war. Suddenly, he thought of what Bihan had said. He hadn't thought that it would come so quickly. Darren, should we make a public statement to clarify? The subordinate couldn't help but speak. Clarify? How would we clarify? Gu Yongdao said coolly. Xiao Mo Gu is clearly a Shuzha. Gu Yongdao interrupted his subordinate. This will make Brothers Wa's situation even more dangerous. He currently needs his identity as a Mo. He had felt kinship with Swa Mo and he was not willing to use this to clear his name. Also, he did not say it, but even if he told them, no one would believe him. Because the people acting against him were the people from the sect. This subordinate was panicked. Darren, we cannot sit around and wait for them to act against us. At this time, a guard suddenly ran in with a terrible expression. Darren, Elder Jean Wu Ming has come. The tent went completely silent. All of the commanders had terrible expressions. Ask Elder Jean to come in. Gu Yongdao's expression was normal. Moments later, a middle-aged person wearing golden clothing with a sharp presence walked in. Gu Yongdao stood up and bowed. Greetings to Elder Jean. Elder Jean's old voice was heavy but his tone was slow. Gu Yongdao, the sect leader orders you to return to the mountain. Your actions this time were too rash and has brought too much trouble to the sect. When you return to the sect, you will need to give a good explanation. The sect believes that you are innocent, but the damage to the sect's reputation was too great. The sect needs you to cooperate. Gu Yongdao was silent while his commanders all had angry expressions. Elder Jean's wizened tone became even slower. Yongdao, there won't be any trouble if you just explain. If it wasn't that the discussion was too fierce, I wouldn't have come to get you. You need to understand the hardships of the sect. Cooperate with the sect and eliminate doubts we have. Gu Yongdao shook his head. Elder, your pardon, the war is a busy time and this disciple does not have the spare time to return to the sect at the moment. Elder, please return to the sect and tell the sect leader that when this war is finished, this disciple will return to the sect and ask for forgiveness. Elder Jean's gaze suddenly became as sharp as a sword as he shouted angrily, Gu Yongdao, you dare to disobey the sect leader. The reality is so, there is nothing I can do, Gu Yongdao said deeply. Good. Elder Jean said 3 goods and then said coldly, there is nothing I can do. If Gu Shidi knew his most beloved disciple was so disobedient, I only wonder what he thinks in the afterworld. A deep grief flashed across Gu Yongdao's eyes. He slowly stood up and looked directly at Elder Jing. If it was not to repay Master's grace of raising me, would I stay at Xixian? I have fought countless times for the sect, almost died multiple times, and have rendered great service to the sect. I don't owe the sect. If Master knew what the Shi Xian he had always defended has become like this now. Gu Yongdao allowed the tears to fall down his face. Elder Jing's face turned into a mix of colors as he shouted angrily. Good, good, good. You have become proud due to your achievements. You dare to not listen to the orders of the sect leader. This is treason. He looked around and said coldly to the commanders, are you all going to follow Gu Yongdao and betray Shi Xian? What's the use in such a ruthless sect? Well, betray you. I've long given up on this corrupt sect. This is very good, end it all. The commanders stood up one after the next and looked with fury and disdain at Elder Jin. Elder Jin's old face became ashen and his extremities felt cold. Over the next few days, Shi Xian's Tiger General Gu Yongdao led his battalion in leaving Shi Xian. The world was left astounded. Chapter 657, Tang Battalion. It had been a month since the incident by the time Zhuai Mo learned that Gu Yongdao had left Shi Xian. Zhuai Mo was filled with guilt. From beginning to end, Gu Yongdao had not stepped forward to defend himself. There was much speculation about Zhuai Mo's identity, but most of it focused on his identity as a Yaomo. He believed this was the reason for Gu Yongdao's silence. The two had exchanged imprints. Zhuai Mo thought for a moment and then wrote a letter to Gu Yongdao thanking him for keeping the secret and asking what he could do to help. A paper crane quickly flew back into Zhuai Mo's hand. Gu Yongdao's letter was very short. He had just finished a battle when he wrote this letter. In the letter, Gu Yongdao wrote that he had already sealed the chaos rift connecting to Shixian territory and they would no longer receive any supplies in the future. He had taken over 15 mo jia and was planning to manage them so he could be self-sufficient. Right now, everything was good and there was no immediate worries. Zhuai Mo was relieved after reading this. 15 jia, even if it was only 15 small jia, was enough to support Gu Yongdao's battalion. However, these 15 jia they occupied were Mo territories and the Mo had a deep hatred of Xiuzhe. It would not be simple for Gu Yongdao to govern these 15 jia. However, Gu Yongdao shouldn't have any problems in the short term. Zhuai Mo decided that after he went to Nether Springs Jia and returned to Cloud Sea Jia, he would set up a transportation formation to Gu Yongdao's territories. They could then travel freely and help each other. Zhuai Mo threw away his worries about Gu Yongdao and started to ponder his present situation. In this past month, they had been traveling at full speed. It had to be said that the name of Xiao Mo Gu was famous in all of the Mo territories. Defeating the Yu frontier guards, killing Marshal Yu, having a good friendship with Gu Yongdao, and so on. This made the name of Xiao Mo Gu an intimidating one. Zhuai Mo had previously thought he should travel in a low-key manner. But there had been too many battles along the way. Seeing this, Zhuai Mo decided to announce his presence, relying on the fame of the name Xiao Mo Gu to avoid trouble. As expected, this move was immediately effective. Those factions that previously did not know their background immediately shuddered and they learned that the incomers were Xiao Mo Gu's battalion. They even consciously restrained their own battalions. There had been a Mo general who hadn't believed that Xiao Mo Gu was as strong as the rumors and wanted to test their skill. In the end, all of his commanders had opposed him, and he had been assassinated in his bedroom that night. Having raised his banner, Zhuai Mo's path could be said to be free of any blockades. However, Zhuai Mo was not happy. While their speed had accelerated, they had exposed their movements to the public. Where had Xiao Mo Gu reached today? This was one of the hottest topics of the present Mo world. Other problems came with this. At the beginning, they had been deeply afraid of Zhuai Mo and the others. However, they quickly found that Xiao Mo Gu was not as brutal and vicious as the rumors said. As long as they did not provoke him, he would not attack. He did not have any interest in their territories. Many people wanted to establish relations with such a strong and reasonable battalion. Even if they could not form a relationship, it would be good to curry favor. Consequently, many messengers came every day with gifts and invitations for Zhuo Mo's group to be guests. Zhuo Mo didn't know whether to cry or laugh. He still accepted the gifts, but he refused all invitations. Yet what he hadn't expected was that there were large numbers of Mo that came due to his reputation with hopes of entering his battalion. At the beginning, there hadn't been many people, but when the first group of Mo who had come had seen the powerful soldiers of Vermilion Bird Camp and Sin Battalion, they had been stunned, and their desire had grown even hotter. When these people spread the mirages, it caused a great wave. All the large families started to study these inaccurate mirages. The conclusion they reached was the same: a powerful battalion. Defeating the Ming bandits and defeating the Yu frontier guards, these two battalions had now been ranked high among the many battalions in the 100 Savage of the Dark. Looking at these mirages, the last bit of doubt disappeared. They suddenly realized. No wonder they could defeat the Ming bandits and the Yu frontier guards. Mo always ranked themselves based on power. The strong were revered, and many Mo that thought themselves more than ordinary furiously rushed over. Xiao Mo Gu being able to kill Marshal Yu meant that Xiao Mo Gu possessed an ability to fight at a high level. Adding on the two top battalions, he had formed his own group. For those Mo which came from minor families but were talented, entering Xiao Mo Gu's battalion was undoubtedly a very good path. As more and more Mo came due to his name, and a long tail of people formed behind Zhuo Mo's group. They did not dare to go too close to the battalions, but they were not willing to leave. They prepared their own food and followed the battalion. This was something novel to the Mo and it stirred everyone's interest. All kinds of reports spread. Every time Xiao Mo Gu did something, the world would immediately know. This was a very popular topic at meals and during tea with lots to discuss. All of 100 Savage Realm was watching the spectacle and Zhuo Mo felt frustrated. This cannot continue. Zhuo Mo's expression was one of helplessness. The people around him were giggling. These people were all from grassroots and minor families. While they did not say it, they still felt very good about being famous. They made faces at each other and smiled deviously. Other than Bihan. Bihan was of noble birth and had grown up in Xian Kong Temple. He had become immune to the reverent gazes from others a long time ago. His icy face was eye-catching. However, everyone knew his personality and did not care about his icy face. "I'm being serious," Zhuo Mo said with a serious expression. "We don't know how many spies are mixed with these people. Each of our movements is being monitored. This is very dangerous." Everyone put away the mirth on their faces. They had all fought their way out of death on the battlefield and understood the danger more than the average person. Very dangerous. Gong Sun Cha smiled bashfully. Seeing Lil Miss Darren's smiling face, everyone's heart shook. Everyone think of a solution, what would be good? Zhuo Mo had an expression of hardship. "Kill them all," Bihan said coolly. The entire tent was silent. Everyone was frightened by Bihan's crisp and brisk words. There were a few among them for whom it was the first time that they were attending a meeting: Zha Gu, Bihan, Miao Jun, and Tang Fei. Among them, Zha Gu was the most cautious. He had decided to follow Gongsun Cha a while ago, but it was the first time he was seeing Zhuo Mo. Miao Jun and Tang Fei also chose to remain silent. Only Bihan had not done that. Zha Gu jumped in fright. Mo were fond of killing, but he had never seen someone with such disregard for life. Miao Jun's pupils shrank. Tang Fei's expression became furious. She was a righteous person and disliked Bihan, who behaved like a serial killer. Before Tang Fei spoke in opposition, Zhuo Mo shook his head. "It is not suitable." Zhuo Mo was not a madman like Bihan. While he was not soft when fighting an enemy, but he would not be able to do something like killing all these Mo that came due to his reputation without a cause. Gong Sun Cha said, "Since they have come for you, then why don't we recruit the outstanding ones? We just have to be careful and not let in spies. Suemo thought, yes, they were coming to him, why shouldn't he take them? He did not need to worry about the spies mixed within. Pu Yao and Wei could see with a glance those with other intentions. His gaze swept across everyone's faces. When his gaze landed on Miao Jun, he paused. There was no question regarding Miao Jun's strength. A gold battle general was a talent no matter what faction he was in. It would be waste if Suemo had him sitting idle all the time. But while Miao Jun had come along, his intentions were unclear. Miao Jun had never disguised this, but he did not speak to reveal the reason he followed Suemo. Because of this, Suemo had some hesitations about him. When his gaze swept across Tang Fei who stood beside Miao Jun, his eyes lit up. This little girl had a strong sense of justice, was stubborn and focused. She would not accept any flaws. Since she had agreed to Tao Xing's suggestion to follow him, she would not ever regret it. Even though she never had a good face for Suemo, she would meticulously finish any orders Suemo gave her. Suemo trusted her. Before this, she had the skill of a silver battle general. After this period of being taught by Miao Jun, she had started to have some of a presence of a great battle general. Suemo suddenly thought of a clever idea. That's right. If that's so, then let's create a new battalion. Oh, let's call it the Tongzi Battalion. Tang Fei will be the main commander, with Miao Jun as second in command. Everyone had surprised expressions and they turned to look at Tang Fei. This young girl with her hair in a ponytail was not eye-catching, but at this time, she became the focus of the entire group. While not many had seen her skill and were curious about her, no one spoke up against Suemo's decision. Tang Fei also was surprised, but she quickly calmed down. She looked at Suemo and then at Miao Jun. Technically, Miao Jun was more suitable to being the main commander than she was, as Miao Jun was much more skilled. Miao Jun smiled at her. He understood what Suemo thought, but this plan suited his own thoughts. While the two sides had not explicitly said this, but in truth, Tang Fei was his student and he liked his student very much. If this was somewhere else, Tang Fei's strength would be enough to be a main commander, but he hadn't thought that Suemo would have so many skilled battle generals. Nothing had to be said about Gongsun Cha and Bihan. The two were of the same level as Guliang Dao. Miao Jun could only look up to these top battle generals. It really was rare to see two top battle generals in one faction. It was the first time Miao Jun had met a Zha Gu, but he had heard of this name before. Gold Battle General, one of the three great battle generals of the Stellar Rahula clan. He hadn't thought the other would also enter Xiao Mo guest service. One could not forget that Xiao Mo Gu himself was also Gold Battle General. Even those others such as Xu Long and the people under Gongsun Cha were not lacking compared to Tang Fei. It completely surpassed his imagination just how fierce the competition in this faction was. Tang Fei was very talented, but if she did not gain experience, it was hard to say what she could accomplish in the future. Right now, a political structure had taken form under Xiao Mo Gu and it would not be so easy to become of the main commanders. He understood his student very well. With her personality, since she agreed to follow Suemo, she would not regret it no matter how underutilized she was. The other who he also taught was Xu Long. He was one of Suemo's inner circle and he did not have to worry about the other's future. Only Tang Fei had been in an awkward position. He hadn't thought that Suemo would throw out such a plan. He immediately recognized that this was a 1 in 1,000 chance for Tang Fei. Before Tang Fei could speak, Miao Jun stood unhesitatingly. Yes, we will not fail. Chapter 658, The Black Smoke. Yao's memory piecing art. The establishment of the Tongzi Battalion went smoothly. Miao Jun knew what needed to be done and clearly had experience in this area. Many people noticed this and were curious about his past. Miao Jun's skill wasn't just theoretical, he was experienced, the kind of experiences that could not be obtained by just studying to be a battle general. Pu Yao had specialized lie-detecting Yao arts and quickly identified the spies mixed within the crowd, techniques that broadens Zhuo Mo's experiences. The Tongzi battalion quickly formed its basic combat structure. The ones that had joined were mostly from small families and had some ability. Following Miao Jun's suggestions, Tang Fei did not recruit a large number of people but picked only the most outstanding. Compared with the other battalions, the Tongzi battalion could only be said to be a small battalion of about 800 people. These 800 people were picked out from approximately 100,000 people. In terms of average individual power, they were much stronger than Xinglian or Celestial Planet Guards. Xiao Mo's present reputation was much more attractive to the experts than Xing Yi's. What shocked Zhuo Mo even more was that more than 20 general-level Mo had come to join him as well. This caused Zhuo Mo to feel a bout of pride. Gu is now a major figure that could recruit general levels. There were 7 battle generals among the 20 general levels and all of them were silver battle generals. This made Zhuo Mo overjoyed. Right now, he did not lack for gold battle generals. Gongsun Cha, Bihan, Miao Jun, and Ajia Gu, all of them could act by themselves. Gongsun Cha and Bihan were top battle generals. But in a whole battalion, other than a powerful main commander, the intermediate level commanders were also very important. Especially when the battalions grew larger, more and more outstanding intermediate level battle generals were needed. Yet Zhuo Mo lacked these intermediate level battle generals. When the additional manpower was accepted into the combat structure, Zhuo Mo's power would undoubtedly go up another level. The stringent criteria for recruitment quickly spread between people. The people who had been watching were surprised. Who did this guy think he was? Even those martial levels most likely couldn't compare to him. The people who had not passed the selection started to mock and furiously slandered Xiao Mo Gu. They all thought that they had strength, and it would be easy to be selected. However, they had been eliminated and they were filled with discontent. Xiao Mo Gu was so full of himself and so proud. Zhuo Mo did not pay attention to this. Since he had given the Tang Fei and Miao Jun permission to create the battalion, he did not interfere. He would never question the employed, and never employ the questionable. 1. Every commander's style was different, their way of fighting and their way of cultivation. The systematic teamwork that was required would be directed by Gongsun Cha. Zhuo Mo focused his time on his cultivation. He was progressing rapidly. He had benefited greatly from that hard battle against Marshal Yu. He needed a long time to digest these things. But once he did, his power would skyrocket. Luo Li and Xing Lianer were also in the same state. The purple energy inside a Gui's body was growing daily at an astounding rate. It seemed as though that battle had suddenly opened a door in a Gui's body. Purple energy flooded out and right now, there was 3 times more purple energy inside a Gui's body compared to before. A Gui had become even stronger but Zhuo Mo's worries increased. This strange Shen power was a double-edged sword, harming the enemy meant harming oneself. However, Zhuo Mo wasn't able to do anything. He could only suppress the urgency inside and focused even more on his cultivation. Maybe when he became stronger he could find the key to resolving the purple energy inside a Gui's body. His greatest improvement had come from the 10-crow celestial domain. He had seen every detail of the completed 10-crow celestial domain. Many areas that had been unclear before were now engraved in his mind so his improvement naturally sped up. Right now, he was just one step away from the completed state of the 10-crow celestial domain. Other than his comprehension of the 10-crow celestial domain, there was the great degree of maturation in his Mo physique. The strange fragments of energy that had been formed from the creation and destruction of the anti-dragon claws and Sun Shen crystal's powers were the most primal power. They had strengthened Zhuo Mo in all areas. Mo physique, spiritual consciousness, Ling power, even his Shen power, all of them had increased greatly. This was the most wondrous power that Suemo had ever seen, but when he thought of it, he found that it really was lucky. Both the Sun Crystal Seed and the Anti-Dragon Claw were ultimate treasures of the world. Obtaining one would mean a person had great luck. Having obtained two at once, even Suemo sighed in shock at his own luck. The MO matrix that had formed with the Anti-Dragon Claw had become dim as the Anti-Dragon Claw became silent and seemed to have gone into hibernation. Suemo was slightly disappointed by the slumber of the Anti-Dragon Claw. He had originally thought that he could carry this weapon around and dominate in all directions. Now his wish had gone up in smoke. However, it was good that he didn't need to carry such an enormous thing on his back. In Suemo's sense of beauty, that thing was really ugly. The 3,000 threads of worry did not change and now became the strongest weapon that Suemo had. Suemo felt that he really didn't have enough time. There were all types of cultivation he could work on, but each one would take up a large amount of time. Just as Suemo wanted to cut himself in half to get more work done, the black smoke Yao ran over while appearing secretive. "What is it?" Suemo looked at the other's cunning face and muttered inside, "Did this guy do something bad again?" Then he felt slightly puzzled. Suemo would feel it was normal if it was the orange-haired Yao doing this. But in his mind, the black smoke Yao was usually calm, steady, and well-behaved. "Boss, let me show you something." The black smoke Yao lowered his voice and looked around. Had this guy really stolen something? Suemo felt even more puzzled. He took what the black smoke Yao handed over. It was a little paper card with some words written on it. Suemo looked with bewilderment at the black smoke Yao and then skimmed through. When he saw the first phrase, he was stunned where he stood. There wasn't much content on the paper card and he quickly finished reading it. Suemo finally came out of his daze. 2 spots of red made their way onto his cheeks. This expression would only occur in one circumstance: Xiao Mo Gu had struck it rich. The steel's text. Suemo forced himself to be calm, but his voice still went off tune. N. The black smoke Yao lowered his volume and said carefully, "Boss, you know that I am weak. In order to stop Lin Qian and to create an opportunity for Big Orange and the others, I charged for the steel." "Then you remembered it?" Suemo's voice was excited. "It is not so simple." The black smoke Yao grimaced. "I have a rare skill that not many know of, I have an eidetic memory. However, I only had a cursory glance as Lin Qian reacted too quickly. I recalled this event a while ago, and then I noticed I could recall some of the text on the steel. But it was all very blurry and I had to use memory piecing art to slowly piece it together." Memory piercing art? Suemo was slightly shocked. He had never heard of this Yao art before. Pu Yao suddenly spoke, "It is a type of support Yao art. It can replay past events in the mind like a puzzle coming together. It has the benefit of improving memory. When one reaches a high level, they will gain an eidetic memory and can browse their memories at any time. However, this kind of Yao art is easy to learn but hard to master. It doesn't have any big uses. Only those old researchers would spend energy on things like this." Suemo was very shocked. So there were Yao arts like this. The black smoke Yao was slightly embarrassed. "My talent is average. In order to help my cultivation, I cultivated the memory piecing art. My eidetic memory only came about after I started cultivating this. But the time has been short and I only got a short glance at the steel's text. My impression is very fuzzy, but I still decided to try with the memory piecing art. This is the content that I have pieced together using the memory piecing art. It is not very complete and I am not sure if the content is accurate." When he talked about this, the black smoke Yao was slightly embarrassed. He had gathered his courage for a long time before he had come to find Suemo. He knew that the steel text was important, but what he had pieced together was incomplete, and he didn't even dare to say that it was accurate. In cultivation methods, the difference of one character could cause a great misunderstanding. He didn't know if this thing he had was accurate and therefore have any value. "Boss, just take a look, don't cultivate it." When the black smokeout finished saying this, he felt his face flush. Before Zhuemo could speak, he had run away. Zhuemo laughed. This black smokeout seemed calm usually, but he was truly adorable. His gaze landed quickly on the little card in his hand. "There are some mistakes, but the general parts seem correct." Pu Yao's voice was filled with excitement. "So that is how it is. So that is how it is." In comparison, Wei was much calmer. "Not bad." The two quickly picked out the mistakes on the paper. Of the two, one was an old Yao that was thousands of years old, the other came from an ancient tribe, and their knowledge was not something that Zhuemo could rival. As expected, Zhuemo found that the places in the content where he had felt that it was rough were now much clearer. Shi Ziming had not tried to shroud this in mystery. The few phrases caused Zhuemo to see a whole new world. Almost unconsciously, the Shen power in Zhuemo's body started to move. This time, there was no delay. When his thought formed, his Shen power would follow. A strange feeling formed. His spiritual consciousness spread from the dantian in his head, while the dantian in his abdomen was unusually active. Threads of Ling power spread happily from his abdomen and flowed endlessly along his channels. The power grew like branches from the main channels and innervated every inch of blood and flesh. Ling power, spiritual consciousness, and Mo physique formed a complex and gigantic system. A phrase from the paper card flowed across Zhuemo's mind and he suddenly had an epiphany. He finally understood what the key to the loss of Shen power was. The origin of spiritual consciousness was the head. The power was formed from the inside, from the soul and then released. The Mo physique was the exact opposite. Power originated from the physical body and the power went from the outside to the inside. Ling power was the bridge between the two. It was formed in the dantian and spread throughout the body by the channels. It permeated the blood and flesh, but also into the soul. When this system became clear in Zhuemo's mind, his body suddenly shook. The three powers began circulated unconsciously. They joined together but they were also clearly divided. As they continued to circulate, Shen power formed. Zhuemo's body reached a state of harmony. Each power went about their own duties but they were of one mind, one existence. He felt he was stronger than he had ever been. His body was like the universe. Full of life, and immortal. A strange emotion filled his mind. It was not the strength of his power, but the harmony of his body and soul was powerful as one. Editor's notes. 1. I think this is a reference to famous work. I want to say it is a line spoken by Cao Cao in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Also, does anyone think that a Gui's purple energy grows with how strong Zhuemo gets? He powers up, she gets worse. Clearly a connection. Chapter 659, Li Xian Heir, you have worked hard these past few years. The sect leader's voice was heard from above, the tone was filled with gratification and affection. The disciples looked at their little shimmy standing in the hall like a goddess. Many people had expressions of love but there was also a bit of respect and fear in this love. Compared to her flighty mischievousness attitude in the past, the present Li Xian Heir looked much more steady and even more beautiful. Once she had only been a playful little girl, now there was maturity, and a presence that was hard to describe. Looking at the calm and steady figure in the center, many of the disciples couldn't help but feel emotional. Their little shimmy that had been favored for so many years had grown up to become a leader. There was a faint friendly smile on her face that caused people to feel good. When people were not paying attention, she blinked her eyes playfully at the sect leader and the sect leader returned an affectionate smile from the corner of his mouth. He was filled with pride. His granddaughter had lived up to his hopes. However, he quickly hid away the mirth on his lips and said in a stern voice, I have gathered you all here today to assign missions to each of you. Yes, the disciples said in unison. 1 month ago, Heavy Wuxia was taken over by the MO. The MO were cunning and sealed off all methods of communication, so we didn't discover this until 5 days ago, when they had took over 3 nearby Jia, including Bright Jing Jia. The disciples were astounded, their faces full of disbelief. They didn't know where Heavy Wuxia was, but every disciple knew where Bright Jing Jia was located. Bright Jing Jia was only an intermediate-sized Jia, but it was an important producer of Tianhuan's Jingshi, including a special kind of Jingshi called Bright Jingshi, which was only produced in Heavy Wuxia. Bright Jing Jia provided large amounts of both Jingshi and Bright Jingshi for Tianhuan, an important resource Jia for Tianhuan. But the noisy hall quickly quieted down. Tianhuan was one of the 4 great sect and their disciples were all disciplined. After the initial shock, they quickly recovered their calm. The sect leader was very satisfied with the performance of the disciples. The importance of Bright Jing Jia to us does not need to be stated, I believe that you all know, the sect leader said coolly. The elders in the sect all have important missions and cannot go. So the mission will be given to you this time. Tian Man. This disciple is here. Sure, Tian Man stood out. Do you have the confidence if this matter is handed to you? The sect leader said. I will not fail, Sure, Tian Man said seriously. And, you can select the personnel and battalions that you want. I only have one condition, take back Bright Jing Jia in a month, the sect leader said coolly. This disciple understands. Sure, Tian Man responded with a calm expression and no panic at all. The sect leader showed a satisfied expression. Grandfather. Li Xian'er shook the sect leader's arm with a pout. All right. If you keep shaking, grandfather will break apart. The sect leader said with a smile. His eyes were narrowed and he had a relaxed expression. You have done well. Even your Gue Shishu praised you. Not bad. He said, not bad, twice, which showed just how proud he was. Gue Shidi was a strict trainer who did not spare people due to their relationships. It was extremely difficult to earn praise from his mouth. He felt very proud that his granddaughter had received praises from Gue Shidi, who was famed for his strictness. Of course, look whose granddaughter I am. Li Xian'er giggled. The sect leader was very pleased by the flattery, but he still pretended to be stern and coughed lightly. But do not be too proud, you must know. Seeing that her grandfather was about to start lecturing her again, Li Xian'er felt her head about to swell. She hurriedly changed the topic. Grandfather, you summon me back with such urgency, is there something important? The sect leader was distracted and the smile on his face disappeared. He showed slightly worry. Your Xiao Rong Xixiang is not in a good situation. What about Xiao Rong Xixiang? The smile on Li Xian'er's face disappeared and she asked urgently. He first suffered a loss to Mu Shi and then again to a person called Gongsun Cha. While his situation is not good, there is no danger temporarily. Mu Shi of the Palace Lakewood clan. Li Xian'er's response was quick. Yes, I hadn't thought that the Palace Lakewood clan would have such an outstanding member in their younger generation. The sect leader said emotionally. Then who is Gongsun Cha? Li Xian'er's brow furrowed. She tilted her head and looked with an expression of curiosity. At this time, she finally looked as playful as she did in the past. This person is not well known and it isn't known where he came from, but he is very strong. The sect leader's expression was grave. It has been some time since the battle. Gongsun Cha is very mysterious and we only recently identified which faction he belonged to. Which faction? Li Xian'er blinked her eyes curiously. She was surprised that Mu Shi had defeated Xiao Rong Xixiang, but that was within the range of normality. Palace Lakewood clan was one of the famed families in the Yao world and had a long history of producing outstanding battle generals. But this something Cha was able to defeat Xiao Rong Shixiang as well. She was shocked. She knew just how strong Xiao Rong Shixiang was. Among the younger disciples in the sect, only Tianman Shixiang could rival him. Xiao Mo Gu. The sect leader said 3 words. Li Xian'er's face was puzzled. Who is he? This person is very mysterious. The sect leader's expression was grave. You have just returned and there are some things you do not know. First, Xiao Mo Gu and Gu Liang Dao are good friends. Just a while ago, Gu Liang Dao suddenly left Xixian. The cause of this was this Xiao Mo Gu. Ah! Li Xian'er exclaimed and wasn't able to maintain her calm. Of course she knew who Gu Liang Dao was. Xixian's Tiger General, the undoubted top battle general of the younger generation. Such a person had betrayed their sect. If it wasn't that the person who was telling her this was her grandfather, she would have had a hard time believing it. The sect leader seemed to not see his granddaughter's shock and continued. No one can say what Xiao Mo Gu's background is. Even now, we are uncertain about whether he is a Yao or a Mo. He had gone into the 10-finger prison and activated a prison-breaking battle. This person isn't just strong, he is an outstanding battle general. He defeated Corps Commander Yu Heng of the Regular Corps, a gold battle general. Li Xian'er's mouth was open wide. Her face that was usually filled with smiles was full of shock. The sect leader did not stop and continued. Xiao Mo Gu then appeared in the Mo's Great Peace City. Li Xian'er recovered and hurriedly asked, the Great Peace City with the Great Peace Mo steals? Yes. The sect leader said sternly, do you know about the Great Peace Treasure Pavilion? I know. Li Xian'er nodded obediently. I have read about it in the records. The sect leader nodded. We have always had our people in Great Peace City because of the Great Peace Treasure Pavilion. That is also why we know such much about what happened at Great Peace City. Li Xian'er did not interrupt and listened curiously. Xiao Mo Gu suddenly appeared at Great Peace City. When he appeared, he made a flamboyant appearance. He caused the worldly apparition Shifting Star Sands, killed Shin Yu who had comprehended the Peacock King plume. The Mo physique he cultivates is the pure, 10-crow celestial apparatus. When the Great Peace Treasure Pavilion appeared, we also sent people but we hadn't expected Kun Luen to send Lin Qian. Lin Qian. Li Xian'er jumped in fright. Lin Qian was the eldest disciple of Kun Luen, and undoubtedly the first person of the younger generation. Lin Qian is really powerful and managed to intimidate all of the Mo. He almost managed to achieve his aim, but at the most crucial moment, Xiao Mo Gu used the anti-dragon claw to block his sword strike. Anti-dragon claw. Li Xian'er felt slightly dizzy. Each of the Sky Missouri weapons of the Mo were famed. Normal Shouja may not know of them, but how could the core disciples of a major sect be ignorant? Even the sect leader grimaced. This boy can be called a freak. With power of a general level, he tamed the Sky Missouri weapon. This has never happened before in the history of the Mo. Then when Great Peace City was surrounded by 100 Savage Realm's strongest bandits, the Ming bandits, he defeated them. Report said fighting was extreme and that the battalion that defeated the Ming bandits is one that you know. A battalion that I know? Which one? Li Xian'er asked dazedly. Xian Kong Temple Sin Battalion. Sin Battalion. Li Xian'er's eyes were dumbstruck. Of course she knew Sin Battalion. The 4 great sects had exchanges and knew each other very well. The famed Sin Battalion, how could she not know? She murmured, isn't the commander of Sin Battalion someone called Bihan? Yes. The sect leader nodded. You came back late and don't know yet. The first time Bihan was sent to fight, he took Sin Battalion and betrayed Xian Kong Temple. Li Xian'er was completely stunned. Was this Xiao Mo Gu a specialist in getting people to leave and betray their factions? Xian Kong Temple's Bihan left, Shi Xian's Tiger General Gu Yang Dao left, the disciples that betrayed their sects were all core disciples. What kind of power did this guy have? A hint of curiosity suddenly rose. Once it formed, it couldn't be erased. Looking at his granddaughter's wide mouth and stunned expression, the sect leader then said, then they encountered Marshal Yu, who came with 10,000 Yu frontier guards. Marshal Yu wanted the anti-dragon claw that Xiao Mo Gu had. The two fought. Xiao Mo Gu's group killed Marshal Yu and defeated the Yu frontier guards. Li Xian'er felt that she was completely numb. He had even killed a marshal. This person could not be described any longer as freakish. When the battle finished, 2 battalions came to reinforce him. One was Gong Sun Cha, the other was Gu Yang Dao. The sect leader spoke meaningfully. This was also the reason that Gu Yang Dao left Shi Xian. Freak. A definite freak. Li Xian'er swallowed hard. She had always felt that she was a mischievous person, but, today, she discovered that she actually was very good. This Xiao Mo Gu caused a storm of blood wherever he went. The people he met would betray their sections. Compared to him, she really was obedient and quiet. She suddenly had an impulse to meet this person, this Xiao Mo Gu who could not settle down and always created a storm. The sect leader glanced at his granddaughter and showed an imperceptible smile. However, he quickly resumed his solemn expression. This time, you have to go on behalf of grandfather to the Mo territories. Chapter 660, Destiny. Finally having guidance on how to comprehend Shen power, Zhuo Mo's control over the Shen power inside his body greatly increased. Zhuo Mo had to admire Shi Ziming. He was a great person indeed. Having never cultivated any power in his life, but he was still able to understand the secrets of power. This kind of talent only appeared once in 1,000 years. Having found the key, Zhuo Mo's Shen power growth did not increase, but his manipulation of Shen power reached a whole new level. The power of Shen techniques were far more powerful than the other 3 powers at the same stage. However, the Shen power inside Zhuo Mo was very weak and Shen techniques required a lot of Shen power. The cryptic text on the golden leaf had become much easier to understand. He quickly mastered some of the Shen techniques. In the past, when he had used Shen techniques, his 3 powers had to be individually moved and coordinated. Zhuo Mo had found it difficult. Now when he cast a Shen technique, almost as his thought had formed, the 3 powers would circulate together and the Shen technique would form in that instant. It seemed to flow smoothly and occur naturally. There wasn't any blockade. After his success, Zhuo Mo's first thought was to share this method with a Gui, but he didn't know if a Gui could understand this. The other person he could share this with was Tsing Lianer, but Zhuo Mo hesitated. In his mind, Tsing Lianer's importance could not compare to a Gui. However, she had never retreated from any of his battles and had even been wounded last time. Zhuo Mo felt that she could be considered one of his people. He pulled a Gui and Tsing Lianer over before starting to talk. A Gui's face was wooden as though she did not hear it, but Tsing Lianer's expression was overjoyed. She kept her ears open in fear she would miss a word. Zhuo Mo narrated everything he had experienced before stopping. But a Gui still looked the same and didn't react at all. Zhuo Mo sighed inside and then rubbed a Gui's head. Seeing Tsing Lianer in a trance, he did not make a sound and left, pulling a Gui along. Having left, Zhuo Mo suddenly thought of a question and called the black smoke Yao over. Zhuo Mo said with a serious expression. "The thing you gave me is very useful. Tell me what you want." The black smoke Yao understood Zhuo Mo's meaning. Zhuo Mo wanted to thank him. He thought for a moment and then said calmly, "My talent is average, but Big Orange's talent is very good. Boss, teach him more." Seeing the black smoke Yao calmly giving his chance to Big Orange, Zhuo Mo was moved. He said with a smile, "Everyone here are brothers. Even if you don't ask that, I won't hide anything from him. This is me thanking you." If you have something you want or some wish, as long as it is possible. The black Sumyao shook his head calmly. Boss, you also say that everyone here are brothers. Since we are brothers, isn't this something that should be done? Boss, if you go around thanking us for this and for that, aren't you making us outsiders? Suemo stilled at the black smoke Yao's words. The black smoke Yao had a calm expression that seemed to be full of sincerity in Suemo's eyes. He couldn't help but be moved. He nodded and said, "You are right, I'm treating you like an outsider." Suemo decided secretly to find a set of suitable Yao arts for the black smoke Yao. If he didn't have any, then he would make one. While Suemo's present strength had not reached martial level, his understanding of power may not be less than that of a martial. He knew the mysteries of Shen power and had experienced even higher level power. He had an understanding of the quality and direction of power that surpassed his strength. "Darren, they are going to Nether Springs Jia," a scout respectfully reported. Xiao Mo guessed destination wasn't a secret and many knew. Nether Springs Jia. Jiang Zhe's eyes flickered across the Jia map and quickly landed on a faraway place. His expression was calm and serene. The scout lowered his head and didn't dare to breath. Ever since Feng Yushiji had been killed, Darren had become even more silent and cold. The commander's fear of him grew by the day. "You are dismissed." Jiang Zhe waved his hand. "Yes." The scout released a breath and hurriedly responded respectfully before carefully retreating. After the scout left, Jiang Zhe's eyes did not leave the Jia map. A moment later, he seemed to sigh and murmur, "Bihan." On the desk beside him, a paper that had crease marks had the newest orders from the sect. "Kill the traitor Bihan. Exterminate Sin Battalion." He was not shocked when he received this order. Xian Kong Temple's inner core had always been tight-knit and the sect leader wouldn't tolerate betrayal. Guliang Dao's betrayal had shocked all of the Xiuzhe world. Shi Xian's reputation had been greatly damaged. While the betrayal of Sin Battalion had not been spread far and wide like Guliang Dao, the higher-ups in the bigger sect all knew. The sect definitely would not permit Bihan to live. In order to kill Bihan and Sin Battalion, large numbers of reinforcements were being funneled towards the mission. The battalions that had been ordered to come surpassed any of his previous missions. Jiang Zhe felt complicated feelings. Who could have thought that the biggest action of Xian Kong Temple in the last 1,000 years was to kill a traitor? Sin Battalion and Jiangzi Battalion, Bihan and Jiang Zhe. Two core battalions, two young battle generals that had rivaled each other since childhood. They were about to welcome a destined battle of life and death. Even people like Jiang Zhe who had a strong mind couldn't help but sigh. Xiao Mo Gu. This unfamiliar name entered Jiang Zhe's vision. Unbelievable fights, each could almost be called miraculous. Jiang Zhe was filled with curiosity towards Xiao Mo Gu. Even someone as proud as Bihan had entered his service. If he didn't have confidence in the abilities of the sect, he would snort at the news. Bihan was usually of few words, but when he fought, he was fiery, brutal and bloodthirsty. He would actually swear allegiance to someone else. However, someone that could kill a martial level. This strength was enough to stun people. He shook his head and his gaze landed on another name. Gongsun Cha. This name that was unknown had been labeled as extremely dangerous. His danger level was the same as Bihan. He had to be careful. If this Gongsun Cha really had the same level of skill of Bihan, then he did not have confidence in this fight. Jiang Zhe was more willing to believe this was due to the importance the sect placed on this fight. At the same level as Bihan. If that was true, then it would be terrifying. Jiang Zhe threw the stray thoughts to the back of his mind. No matter how strong his opponents were, this battle could not be avoided. He didn't just have to win, he had to make it beautiful. Because this battle wasn't just related to the reputation of the sect, it was also needed to intimidate the stupid people that were considering shifting allegiances in the sect. Gu Yongdao's betrayal of Shi Xian had had major effects with the factions within the sect. Right now, Shi Xian was divided and its people were not united. This kind of matter could not happen to Xian Kong Temple. Jiangzhe was to use reality to tell them there was only one outcome in betraying the sect: die without any chance of burial. Lin Qian was naked as he soaked in a crystal-clear pool. There were numerous complex sealed scripts that crisscrossed around the border of the pool. His expression was serene as though he was a sleeping baby. There were 8 or so sword shio around the pool. Their faces were wizened, but when their eyes moved, sharp sword-like lights would flash. Suddenly, Lin Qian's body gave off a faint light. The light was not blinding and was comfortable to see. The old people around the pool shifted with excited expressions on their faces. This warm energy was not like any power they had seen before. Shen power. This is Shen power. The heavens bless our Kunlun. Little Lin Qian is definitely the pillar of our sect. Lin Qian slowly opened his eyes from within the pool. The light disappeared from his cool eyes. He did not move, but the water in the pool suddenly flooded towards him. It came in layers and moved like smoke. In a blink, Lin Qian was dressed and the water in the pool had turned into a blue robe. This disciple greets sect leader, Shishu. Lin Qian respectfully bowed. Is it Shen power? A Kunlu elder couldn't resist asking. Yes. Lin Qian said respectfully. But it is not complete. This disciple is just mimicking Shen power from memory. Try and see. The one who spoke was the Kunlun sect leader. His brow was straight and his eyes had been half-deaded all this time. The pair of eyes were deep, aged and seemed to see through everything. Yes. Lin Qian raised his right hand. Faint blue Shen power turned into a flying sword that appeared in his hand. It really is Shen power. The power is above Shen power, an elder couldn't help but say. The sect leader came forward and reached out to grip the blue flying sword made from Shen power. Pia pia pia. Countless blue lights exploded in the sect leader's hand, but the sect leader did not seem to be affected and his hand did not move. Pia. A sound that was louder than the ones before it. The Shen power blue sword suddenly exploded. The sect leader's hand did not move at all. The blue energy that had exploded seemed to be imprisoned in his palm, like an invisible cage. The lights flashed but they were unable to break free. The sect leader only took away his hand after the light faded. He said coolly, it is more domineering than Ling power and about twice as strong. However, if one wants to cultivate Shen power, they will have to cultivate all 3 powers. Lin Qian was floored by the sect leader's deduction. As expected of the sect leader. He saw it at a glance. Lin Qian said respectfully, yes. All 3 powers. The other elders frowned. Kunlun had yearned after Shen power for a long time, but they had never gotten it. If it wasn't that Lin Qian had fought against Xiao Mo Gu and the others and experienced Shen power, they still wouldn't know anything about it. They hadn't expected Lin Qian to have such high comprehension that he could create the initial form of Shen power after one battle. These Kunlun elders had been at the height of their joy and thought that Shen power could be taught widely. But when they heard that the sect leaders say that all 3 powers were required, they all frowned. In Kunlun, there were very rarely those that could cultivate 3 powers together. In other words, the great majority of disciples were not qualified to cultivate Shen power. In this case, the utility of Shen power would be deeply underscored. If a new disciple started training now, they wouldn't know how long it would take until they were able to fight. The state of affairs was so chaotic now they could not afford to wait. The sect leader's eyes that seemed to see through everything opened slightly. He looked towards Lin Qian and changed the topic. Tell us about the impression those people cultivating Shen power gave you. Lin Qian closed his eyes and thought back. Then he opened them. They cultivate different Shen power. Xiao Mo Guess Shen power is domineering and burning, the two women next to him have an eerie and a cold power. That middle-aged woman's Shen power is lacking compared to Xiao Mo Guest Trio and is just in its infancy. The sect leader nodded. Go down now and rest. The elders and I will perfect the cultivation method for Shen power. Come back and in a few days to try the new method. Lin Qian was about to leave and the sect leader suddenly called him. Go investigate all the records of ancient tribe descendants being killed in the last 200 years. Lin Qian stilled and then quickly reacted. Yes. Chapter 661 The orange-haired Yao learned the Yao arts that Sui Mo taught on the first try. The orange-haired Yao laughed into the sky. His bright orange hair floated around like a ball of fire. He was very smug. Things like Yao arts cannot satisfy a genius like me. Owen felt this guy was an eyesore no matter how he looked. He said disdainfully, with just the amount of ability you have, ye can beat your teeth out with just a finger. The orange-haired Yao was furious. Come come come. Let us fight 300 rounds. The first one to flee is a dog. Owen glared back angrily. I'm just afraid you are the son of a turtle. Bam 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 bam. They started again. Nanyu covered her forehead and said with an expression of helplessness. It will be fine once you are accustomed. The black smoke Yao did not change expression. Ming Juzi and Song Zhe raised their heads at the same time and looked at each other before lowering their heads to go back, concentrating on their own cultivation. Sui Mo had taught them new Yao arts, but what was most valuable was that he had taught them about the lessons in the Great Peace Mo Steels. Each of them had been given a copy of the text from the Great Peace Mo Steel. The great skill that Sui Mo had displayed with all kinds of Yao arts had immediately attracted their attention. There was also a group of flower Yao that listened to his lesson with them. Only a one who cultivated Mo skills was an aberration. The two who had progressed the most was the orange-haired Yao and, unexpectedly, the other was a one. There was nothing to be said of the orange-haired Yao's improvement. While he was forgetful and easily distracted, his talent was just as unfathomable as his changes in subject. A one was even weirder. Sui Mo clearly was talking about Yao arts, but a Wen's Mo skills were what improved. But the two who had improved the most did not like each other. They had to fight a few times each day, especially when Sui Mo was not present. However, this time, Sui Mo caught them in the act. A Wen stood with lowered eyes in front of Sui Mo. The orange-haired Yao continued to make faces at Sui Mo. The other people had expressions of anticipation. Was Darren going to punish these two people who didn't have bottom lines? Why are you two fighting each day? Sui Mo asked. He is jealous of my astounding talent and handsome face, the orange-haired Yao said seriously. A one was furious. You. Come, let us fight 300 rounds. Do not run. The orange-haired Yao's eyes lit up. The first to run is a son of a turtle. You're the son of a turtle. I'll kill you. Sui Mo could only interfere and hold down the two people. However, even restrained, the two still glared angrily at each other. I have a way for the two of you to decide who is better. Sui Mo raised his hand. What method? One of you cultivates the Mo physique, the other Yao arts. It is naturally you cannot compare against each other. Yes, yes. The two nodded. They disliked each other, but the two were cultivating completely different things, so they could not see who was better except by fighting. If this is the case, why don't the two of you cultivate the same thing? Then wouldn't it be easy to see who is better? Sui Mo baited. Ha! Boss is boss, just as good as I am able to think of such a good idea. The orange-haired Yao laughed. Humph. I want you to accept your loss. A one snorted. Sui Mo smiled cunningly. I have a method here that requires cultivating Ling power, spiritual consciousness, and the Mo physique together. However, let me tell you first off that it is very difficult to cultivate this method. Is it hard? If it isn't hard, then I cannot show my genius, the orange-haired Yao said loudly. Humph, the harder the better, this way, a certain someone will finally accept their defeat. Wen snorted coldly. You idiot, just wait to lick Genius Orange's toes, the orange-haired Yao raised his head proudly to gaze at the sky. I'll kill you, son of a turtle. Wen's eyes burned with fire. Oh. You really have spirit. Motivation. Good. One copy of the method for each of you. Suemo took out 2 jade scrolls with a smile. Each of them took one. Suemo patted the orange-haired Yao's shoulder. Big Orange, do not fail the name of a genius. Boss, don't worry. The orange-haired Yao had a proud expression. There isn't any method created yet that can pose a problem to Genius Orange. Suemo walked in front of Wen and patted Wen's shoulder with a smile. Wen, you will have to defend the reputation of guard camp. Boss, don't worry. I'll kill the son of a turtle. Wen gritted out. Crude. The orange-haired Yao had a disdainful expression. Idiot. Wen glared back. Work hard. Suemo smiled as he waved at the two and left. This Xiao guest battalion is too difficult to enter. I heard that only 8 were admitted today. It's normal. Think about it, haven't you seen that they don't lack for people? If it wasn't that there were too many people coming, why would they form a new battalion? It really is frustrating. Did you see the factions nearby? All of them are jealous. I heard my brother say that they have sent people around to recruit people as well. Even if you don't make it, if you can pass the first round of selection, you don't have to worry about finding your next job. If you can go through 2 rounds, there will be at least 20 places you can pick with good benefits. Even the best cannot compare to Xiao guest battalion. He is so young and able, to even kill a marshal. His future is not something that these little factions can have. Maybe he can become king. King? You are exaggerating. Discussion of Xiao Gu was everywhere in the hotel. As the hottest topic of discussion, there was new news about him every day. Also, Xiao Gu was just over 20 and had created such a string of miracles. His influence among the younger generation had reached a stunning level. This was the age when people were most spirited and ambitious. A living role model motivated them. No one noticed that, in the corner, the dim and muddy eyes of an old person suddenly flashed when he heard that Xiao Gu had killed a marshal. The old man was bald, his face full of wrinkles, his clothing in rags and looked very poor. He finished drinking the poor wine before standing and walking out of the hotel. He silently walked on the street. When the wind blew by, his figure looked desolate. Customer, take a look. The newest mirages about the battle where Xiao Gu killed Marshal Yu. Completely new mirages. Only here. Recorded by those present. You have to watch. When the shouts of the store on the side entered the old man's eyes, he stopped walking. How much? 15 mabe. Give me one. All right. The old man walked to the corner and played the mirage. The store was not lying and it was a first-hand recording. However, the recorder was not very powerful and the interference from the power released during the fight had been great, so the image was not very clear. The old man watched carefully. When he saw Suemo and Marshal Yu fight, light flashed across the dull eyes. At this time, the old man was like a vicious weapon with sharp edges and filled with a dangerous presence. But he quickly noticed his change and recovered his previous state. But when he saw Agui, his body shook. Especially when the purple light in Agui's eyes flashed from within the mirage, the old man became motionless. 2 lines of hot tears suddenly rolled from his dull eyes. The mirage in front of him shattered into dots of light without any warning. A sword show. A cold voice came from above the large hall and the commanders below shivered. Yes. The person who spoke was prostrated on the ground and didn't dare to move. His expression was terrified as large beads of sweat dripped from his forehead. The drops made clear sounds as they hit the floor. The commanders looked with sympathy at him. A sword shio dares to move around on my territory. Ha! The cold voice was emotionless as though it was narrating a simple thing. The mo that was on the ground sweated even more. The other commanders also changed expression. Anyone could hear that Lord was angered. Good, very good. The mo who was on the ground had an ashen face. He suddenly kowtowed furiously. Then he raised his blood-covered face and said with a trembling voice, "This subordinate is useless. I have disappointed Lord. This subordinate will pay for the crime with death and is not angry. This subordinate's child is young. Lord, brothers, please look after him." Finishing, his right hand suddenly hit his own head and his head shattered. His body fell to the floor lifelessly. The commanders had expression of pain but no one dared to speak. It would be bad to ask for mercy at this time. Lord was brutal but he still cared about those that had been with him for a long time. As expected, the person in the hall was silent for a moment before speaking. Give a spot in the child camp this year to his son. Tell him not to shame the name of his father. Bury him with honors. Yes. The commanders acknowledged. I heard that Sword Shio said that he did not fear any fight, yes. The commanders' hearts shook and they looked at each other. They hadn't thought that even this had reached the ears of their lord and they immediately knew it wasn't good. They knew Lord's temper. He always wanted to be the best. Since the words the other had said reached Lord's ears, Lord would not be able to tolerate this. If they continued to be silent, everyone was going to end up bad. They exchanged looks. One battle general stood out and said, "This subordinate requests to fight. This subordinate requests to fight. This subordinate also requests to fight." The mo started to come out and request to fight. You are not allowed to use battalions. In my territory, I cannot lose face. And if you have to use battalions to deal with a single sword shio. The cold voice echoed in the large hall. Everyone felt bitter inside. If they knew beforehand how the situation would devolve, then they would have already used battalions to kill this sword shio. Then nothing would have happened. But since Lord had said this, they couldn't do anything. I give you 5 days. If you have not killed that sword shio, you can end your own lives. You do not have to come see me. Everyone felt their scalp prickle. The corpse on the ground entered their view. Their expressions changed but they gritted their teeth and acknowledged. Yes. Chapter 662 Leaving the hall, everyone had serious expressions. One of the more reputable clan leaders said, "Everyone, we have no method of retreat. If we cannot complete this task, the Lord will be angry and it will be a calamity to our clans." The other people nodded. Lord is right. A sword shio dares to be so arrogant under our eyes, if we left him alive we would have no face left. You are right. The people all agreed. They quickly discussed for the clans to send out the strongest experts of their clan to kill this sword shio. No one thought that this battle that was fated to shake the world would be started by their hands. The youth looked at the person in front of him. He was startled and then shot forward to grab the other's collar. He lowered his voice and cried, "You dared to come back. You aren't afraid of being killed." His lowered voice was filled with suppressed excitement. The newcomer chuckled. "Since I dare to come, I am not afraid. If someone saw this, they would definitely scream." This person was Gu Liangdao. In Xixian. Gu Liangdao had sneaked back into Xixian. Who could have thought of this? The white-robed youth released him and set up a jinji to stop people from eavesdropping before he smiled. "I forgot that you are actually a detail-minded person and would leave yourself an escape route. You had conquered those emojia for so long, how could you not do something? You knew that this day would come. Gu Yongdao's smile was slightly bitter. The youth saw this and couldn't help but sigh inside. He smiled and said, "You are pretty good now, at least you are free and don't need to be ordered around by those young masters. Come, let's drink some tea." Gu Yongdao did not speak and drained the cup. "Come and help me," Gu Yongdao suddenly said in a muffled voice. The youth holding the teacup suddenly stilled. His expression was unchanged as he said with a smile, "Your situation is not very good right now. While the people under you are loyal, but many of them have families over here. As time progresses, they will change. Also, you only have Mo Jie under your command and they are not friendly to you Xiuzhe." Gu Yongdao laughed and there was no fear on his face. "You are right, so you come help me. No one knows your talents better than me. It would be very boring for you to die of old age on this mountain." The youth suddenly smiled and rose. "Let's go." Gu Yongdao stilled. "What? You have other things to do?" the youth asked. "Nothing." Gu Yongdao instinctively answered. Then he laughed. "I spent so much time trying to think of many ways to persuade you, but I didn't even use one of them." The youth shrugged. "I'm just an accountant in Xixian and the amount of jingshi I get every month is pitiful. I don't have any family or relationships. At least, with you, I will get to eat meat." "Ha!" Gu Yongdao laughed freely. Their departure did not attract any attention. For Xixian, he was just an insignificant person. Li Xian'er looked around curiously. This was the first time she was in the Mo territories. The guards around her were careful and looked warily at the surroundings. When they saw the group of Mo in the distance, they became even more nervous. A youth flew out of the troop and landed near Li Xian'er. "Is this Tian Huan's Miss Xian'er?" The Mo youth bowed and greeted without any timidity. "I am Li Xian'er." Li Xian'er came forward and bowed. "Sir is?" The Mo youth's gaze landed on Li Xian'er and immediately showed shock. He said with a smile, "This one is the son of Marshal D. Miss Xian'er can call me Shi. She has come with orders from Marshal Miao to welcome Miss Xian'er." "Thanks, Master Shi." Li Xian'er smiled slightly. "Please." She turned his body slightly and reached out to usher her. On the road, the two had a good conversation. She was a good conversationalist, and easy to talk to. He had exceptional knowledge and it was undoubtedly a pleasure to chat with him. Li Xian'er glanced at Zai's guards out of the corners of her eyes and was intimidated. These Mo guards had heavy killing intent around them and clearly were experienced. This Marshal D really had considerable power. She had been very shocked when grandfather had told her to come see the Mo. She had gaped when she learned that Tian Huan had deep relationship with the Mo. She had never been so naive to think that Xiuzhe should exterminate Yao Mo, but she had never thought that Tian Huan and the Mo had such a close relationship. Later, she learned that it wasn't just Tian Huan. The other three great sects also had allies among the Mo. Li Xian'er suspected that there would be allies of the sects in the Yao world as well. After the initial shock, Li Xian'er quickly calmed down. It was normal when she thought about it. The four great sects had existed for thousands of years and the Mo were not a unified and monolithic group. Her mission was to be an envoy to the Mo on behalf of Tian Huan. This was the first time that Tian Huan and Marshal D would meet for the first time. The troop that welcomed them was very large. Someone of Zai's stature acting as the messenger reflected the importance that Marshal D placed on Lien Xian'er's group. Li Xian'er looked around excitedly at the novel scenery along the way. Zai's gaze occasionally landed on Li Xian'er's face and a hint of heat flashed across his eyes. This is Xiao Mo guess information. Mingyu Ye's eyes were bright like stars. Ji Li Yu carefully browsed it. He was able to enter the 10-finger prison and cultivate the 10-crow celestial apparatus. He should have the blood of both Mo and Yao. This person is of unknown background and is very powerful. His Yao arts and Mo skills are very outstanding. He is also a gold battle general. Ming Yu's voice was clear and pleasing to hear. What he cultivates is Shen power. Ji Li's expression was shocked. Shen power? Shen power actually exists. He is not the only one, there are 2 women with him that also cultivate Shen power. We suspect that he is a descendant of an ancient tribe and that he has a complete Shen power inheritance. Is Shen power really that powerful? Ji Liu didn't believe it. The 3 of them together killed a marshal, Ming Yu said lightly. Ji Li's expression moved. Ming Yu's beautiful eyes looked at her and she said, your mission is to get close to him. Get close to him? To steal the method? Ji Liu asked. If there is a chance. Ji Liu looked with puzzlement at Ming Yu. It seemed that the other's main target was not the method. I think he has a good future. Ming Yu looked into the distance. You think he has a good future? Ji Li's voice was puzzled. She did not understand. Maybe he will vie for the world. Ming Yu's last 4 words exploded in Ji Li's ears like lightning. She looked with an ashen expression at Ming Yu. For you, and also for the Ji family, this person is a very good choice. Ming Yu looked at her with a smile. Ji Li's face was pale and her hands and feet felt cold. You will thank me. Ming Yu went close to Ji Liu and then whispered. Mo and the others had encountered trouble. There were small groups of scouts that appeared occasionally. It was clear that this was not a sign of friendliness. Very quickly, the Mo that had come to join Mo disappeared. The factions along the way who had been polite suddenly became hard to talk to. What made it even more difficult were the battalions that came to harass them. These little battalions were not a threat but they had numbers on their side. They seriously delayed Mo's traveling speed. Someone is targeting us. Bihan said coldly. Gongsun Cha agreed with Bihan. Yes, someone is manipulating the situation in secret, and they aren't average people. An average person would not be able to command so many little factions. Xiao Mo's reputation was at its highest right now, meaning the reputation of this person that could give these little factions the courage to attack them was probably even more frightening. Are there any clues? Mo asked. I caught many scouts but these people don't know. Gongsun Cha shook his head as he said. Why is the other targeting us? Mo asked. Don't know. Gongsun Cha shook his head. It seems that we need to start with a few factions. Mo's expression became icy. The harassment seemed to be worsening. These little battalions were as bothersome as flies. If they allowed this to continue, they would have a hard time moving forward. It was very easy to learn the origins of these scouts. In the night, Bihan led Sin battalion to destroy 3 local factions. But unexpectedly, these little factions had seemed to know that there would be a reprisal. The clansmen had moved away and what was left was almost empty ground. Mo smelled a conspiracy. It was the deep of the night. Jiang's thoughts wandered as he stared at the Jia map. He had maintained this position for a whole day. Darren, report. Xiao Mo Gu has encountered harassment from many groups. Jiangzhe looked up. He exhaled. He understood that the sect had acted. The sect's power was really unfathomable. In the message he sent the sect, he stated that he hoped that the sect could buy some time for him. He needed more time to set up. Jiangzhe felt much more relaxed. This battle had been a huge pressure on him. He had fought against Bihan since childhood and the 2 were very familiar with each other. He knew how terrifying Bihan was. They had sparred in the sect but he had never thought there would be a day that he and Bihan would meet on the battlefield. There was no retreat from this battle. He had not thought of escaping, but his personality was cautious and he was even more careful against Bihan. This was a battle that they could not lose. No matter what, they could not lose. Facing such astounding pressure, he was still composed. If there was enough time to prepare, he had the confidence to defeat Bihan. More time meant he would be able to make more preparations. Jiang Zhe stared at the Jie map. After fighting this battle, he would go to Cloud Sea Jie to get revenge for Feng Shiji. Jiang Zhe said to himself. Chapter 663 Wei Xing opened his eyes. His mind had recovered to its best state and he had a feeling that he was at the cusp of a breakthrough. His clothing was ragged and shredded as though he was a beggar. However, looking at him no one would feel that Wei Xing was a beggar. He stood with his back straight, head held high, and his presence was like a sharp and oppressive such that no one could look directly at him. He stood up, picked up the black sword and walked barefoot out of the valley. A group of Emo had gathered outside the mountain valley. When they saw him, they shifted. Everyone had complicated stares full of terror, hate, admiration, and other various emotions. But no one was disdainful. This was an enemy that could not be dismissed. Who's next? Wei Xing's gaze was determined. The Emo shifted again. This was the 4th day. In these 4 days, over 30 people had died under the sword of this sword Xiu. Up until now, no one had even been able to exchange 3 blows. The great majority of people hadn't been able to survive the first strike before dying. He really was terrifying. So Xiuzhe also had people that were like Emo gods. In this moment, everyone's mind stopped and a short silence appeared. But thinking about the order they had received from their superiors, their hearts shook again. If they could not kill him, they were all going to die. Red rose up in these people's eyes. They were like wild beasts forced to the precipice. Someone howled, "Everyone, let's go together." Everyone's eyes lit up. Darren had only said they could not use battalions, but not that they couldn't fight together. Looking at their numbers and the lonely Wei Xing, their morale rose. With so many people attacking one person, no matter how powerful the sword Xiu was, he could not kill all of them. Kill! They cheered as they charged at Wei Xing. Looking at the noisy Emo, Wei Xing's sword-like gaze did not shake at all. His face seemed to be carved from granite, and completely emotionless. He tightened his grip on the black sword and moved forward. In his heart, there was only sword essence. The black sword in his hand seemed to respond to the sword essence in his chest and shook lightly. It was hungry and wanted to drink fresh blood. It probably is a Mo marshal behind this, Pu Yao said with a calm expression. He had spent a long time in the Mo territories with the Corps Command in the past and was very familiar with the Mo. Yes. Wei also nodded. When Pu Yao and Wei agreed on something, it meant that their conclusion was pretty reliable. But, Mo marshal. Sui Mo felt pressure at this answer. Any Mo marshal was the ruler of an entire region. They might have defeated Marshal Yu, but that didn't mean marshals were easy to deal with. If Marshal Ye's battalions hadn't been busy and unable to come to help, if Marshal Yu had actually fought them seriously, Sui Mo wouldn't have had a chance at all. The power that Mo marshal possessed was really too great. Enormous battalions, vast lands, countless experts. Each Mo marshal represented a titan. The power possessed by those top marshals rivaled the 4 great sections. If everything here was being manipulated by a Mo marshal, then it really was great trouble. Sui Mo knew that Pu Yao and Wei's guess was probably correct. With his present reputation, unless there was a Mo marshal supporting them, these little factions would not dare to fight against him. When he had clues, it was easier to investigate. Sui Mo and the other quickly found out which Mo marshal was acting against them. Marshal Hao, the 5th strongest Mo marshal in the 100 Savage realm. The Mo Jie that Sui Mo's group were in now was very close to the area ruled by Marshal Hao. Marshal Hao was the most likely suspect. After investigating, Zhuemo had a clear understanding of Marshal Hao. Compared to Marshal Yu, Marshal Hao could be said to be an old marshal. The number of jie he ruled was 3 times larger than that of Marshal Yu. He had become a marshal hundreds of years before Marshal Yu. Just the little bit of information that they found was enough for Zhuemo to end all thoughts of fighting the other. However, what was puzzling was that if Marshal Yu really had enmity towards them, then they had the power to completely exterminate them. Marshal Hao had more than 100 battalions under his command. To say of nothing else, just the sheer number would be enough to drown them. But why did the other only send little battalions to harass them and slow down their speed? Drag down their speed. What goal did the other have? Zhuemo suddenly jumped up. Was there something waiting up ahead for them? Father, a middle-aged man said respectfully. According to your orders, Zhuemo guess speed has slowed down. Not bad. Marshal Hao had a satisfied expression. His figure was slightly short and stock and he always had a smile on his face. He looked like a normal shopkeeper. He saw the puzzlement on his son's face and said with a smile, "You are puzzled?" "Yes." The middle-aged person nodded. "If we really want to slow them, we only need to invite Zhuemo guest group to be guests here. With father's reputation, they definitely would not refuse. That way, we won't create bad relations with them, and we can still realize our goal. Wouldn't that be better? It is very good you can use your head." Marshal Hao looked at his son and said, "However, you need to look further. What do you feel is a greater danger to us, Zhuemo Gu or Xian Kong Temple?" "Xian Kong Temple," the middle-aged man said after thinking. "While they are our allies in secret, they also have the power to vie for the world and is the greater threat to us." "Right." Marshal Hao smiled coolly. "While Xian Kong Temple appears to have a good relationship with us now, there will be fighting in the future. Zhuemo Gu has potential but he has a weak foundation. It will not be easy for him to establish himself." The middle-aged person was thoughtful. Marshal Hao then said, "However, while Zhuemo Gu doesn't have strong support, he still has a strong group of subordinates. In this battle between Zhuemo Gu and Xian Kong Temple, it will be Xian Kong Temple's victory. However, Zhuemo Gu has a chance to seriously injure Xian Kong Temple. The best result for us is that Zhuemo Gu will greatly injure Xian Kong Temple before dying." The middle-aged person had an expression of realization. So father is using this method to fulfill Xian Kong Temple's request and also warn Zhuemo Gu. Do not underestimate Zhuemo Gu. Even I feel jealous of the people he has. Bihan is a top battle general that can rival Jiangzhou. They have the ability to make trouble for Xian Kong Temple. Marshal Hao smiled darkly. If Xian Kong Temple loses too much in this battle, then Xian Kong Temple's reliance on us will grow and our bargaining position improves. What if Xian Kong Temple loses? The middle-aged man instinctively asked. But when the words left his mouth, he felt what he said was a waste of words. How could Xian Kong Temple lose? That wasn't possible. How could Xian Kong Temple that was even stronger than themselves not be able to take down a Zhuemo Gu's small forces? That wasn't possible. Marshal Yu stilled upon hearing this. His expression became strange. He was silent as though he was deep in thought. The middle-aged person regretted saying his words of garbage but suddenly heard Marshal Yu slowly speak, "If Xian Kong Temple loses, then it will not be good for them." The middle-aged man shook his head. "Xian Kong Temple will not lose. Even if they do, it will not be a heavy blow to them. You do not understand." Marshal Hao shook his head with a serious expression. "They must win this battle and they must do it in a beautiful manner. If they truly lose, then Xian Kong Temple will be in danger. They will have been defeated by their own traitor. The reputation and trust of their top battle general Jiangzhou will be damaged. Xian Kong Temple's secret humiliation will become a weakness exposed to the world. At that time, no matter how large Xian Kong Temple is, it is just a pile of meat to lure in more wolves. The middle-aged person gaped. Tang Fei's mind was burdened. She had paid attention to the harassment they had recently faced and she had a strong feeling of danger. But on the surface, she maintained her calm and was even more strict in supervising Tangzi Battalion's cultivation. The individual skill level of the members of Tangzi Battalion was outstanding and even better than the city guard she had previously led. But their skills and tactics were terrible. It would take a long time before they could reach a satisfactory level. However, that required time and there were no shortcuts. Without the tactics binding them together, this was just a group of rabble. She hoped to shorten the time needed. If a battle really occurred, Tangzi Battalion that were not well trained in their tactics would become a target the enemy would focus on. Tang Darren is asking for you to come. Tang Fei's heart jumped. She knew that it was a meeting about the enemy harassment that had been occurring. She unhesitatingly went with the colonel to Zhuomo's tent. When Tang Fei arrived, almost all the core members in Zhuomo's service were present. Zhuomo's expression was grave. He did not waste words and narrated the results of the investigation as well as his own speculations. Everyone's expressions became serious. Gong Sun Cha was the first to speak. If it really is Marshal Hao, then they do not have good intentions to harass us like this. They definitely want us to fight and weaken each other. Their relationship to the enemy up ahead is strange. Yes. Bihan's tone was murderous and the temperature around him dropped. Zhuomo nodded, but what he asked was another question. More importantly, who is up ahead? This was the most crucial puzzle piece. If they didn't even know who the enemy was, then they didn't have any chance of victory. Gong Sun Cha stared at the Jia map and said, "We are going to Nether Spring Jia. There are many that know this, and the enemy definitely knows. That means that they will only choose to attack us at a location that we have to pass through." Gong Sun Cha's words attracted everyone's attention. Their gazes all moved to the Jia map. On the path that we must pass, having had past interactions with us, knowing our strength, and still daring to fight us. Everyone's gazes moved along the paths on the Jia map following Gong Sun Cha's words. Suddenly, everyone's gazes stopped on one place. Bihan's breathing suddenly became heavy. Chapter 664, Danger. It seems that Xian Kong Temple is determined to exterminate Xiao Mo Gu. However, they really think highly of Xiao Mo Gu. Xue Dong said with a laugh. Xue Dong had thick brows and large eyes. His appearance was fine and he had a bloodthirsty presence from battling for long periods of time. He had come to find Lin Qian immediately after he returned from the front lines. While Lin Qian was the Shixiang, Xue Dong was older. The two had a close relationship. Withdrawing his consciousness from the Jade Scroll, Lin Qian was slightly distracted. In order to guarantee their victory this time, Xian Kong Temple had sent out two of their Fanshu Xiuzhe to kill Xiao Mo Gu. Xian Kong Temple's action was well concealed, but Kunlun's spy was placed high enough in their ranks that they were able to pass this on. What? Xue Dong sensitively detected Lin Qian's state. Lin Qian came back and said with a smile, "This Xiao Mo Gu is really an extraordinary person. It is a pity he will die." Oh. Xue Dong was slightly shocked. "I'm curious to know more about this person that you think so highly of. I fought against him when I went to the Mo territories this time. He seems slightly unfathomable." Lin Qian lightly described. Xue Dong changed expression. He knew how strong Lin Qian was. When Lin Qian said something like this, it meant that their battle had ended in a stalemate. Lin Qian's brow creased. This person's origins are very strange. He seems to have both Yao and Mo blood. Both his Yao arts and Mo skills are strong and he also cultivates Shen power. Shen power? Xue Dong's eyes widened and his face was shocked. Yes, I only comprehended Shen power because I fought against him this time. Lin Qian thought of something and frowned again. He most likely has a complete inheritance. It would not be good if that lands in the hands of Xian Kong Temple. Kuan-Luan wasn't the only one that was studying Shen power. Any sect that had history had ambitions about this. But in terms of who spent the most effort, it was undoubtedly the four great sections. Xue Dong's eyes narrowed. Yes. We cannot have the Shen power inheritance land in Xian Kong Temple's hand. Why don't we send a few people as well? That will not be appropriate. Lin Qian shook his head and his expression was grave. Xian Kong Temple has a legitimate reason to fight. No one can nitpick about their excuse of executing Bihan. If we send someone, then we will be publicly dissolving our relationship with Xian Kong Temple. Xue Dong also frowned. Lin Qian was right. They could not directly send people for this matter. We can still notify Xiao Mo Gu and have him hide. Lin Qian felt the matter was slightly troublesome. He had never thought that Xian Kong Temple would send two Fanshu Xiuzhe for Xiao Mo Gu. Fanshu experts were strategic resources. If it was not a matter of life and death to the sect would not use them. It seemed that Xian Kong Temple also understood the importance of this battle for them. It is really troublesome this time. Zhuo Mo's expression was very ugly. Xian Kong Temple really has a high expression of GE. TSK, Fanshu, and two of them. The other commanders had terrible expressions. Zhuo Mo received a letter today that said Xian Kong Temple had sent out two Fanshu experts to assassinate him. Xian Kong Temple clearly was wary of Zhuo Mo after he killed Marshal Yu, so they were even willing to use such dishonorable tactics to completely eliminate this threat. While no one knew who the sender was, but everyone understood that this letter was probably true. Two Fanshu. This completely exposed the magnitude of Xian Kong Temple's great power. To kill a person by sending two Fanshu, only the four greats would have the resources to do this. This was power. Even with someone notifying him, Zhuo Mo and the others had no solutions. How about we return to Cloud Xijie? Gong Sun Cha looked at Zhuo Mo with worry in his eyes. Two Fanshu would have the ability to cut through their battalion. If they were working with battalions, their power would be even greater. Zhuo Mo grimaced. Not enough time. I'm afraid that these two Fanshu old thieving baldies are not far from us. Bihan was silent. He hadn't thought that the sect would actually send two Fanshu to kill Zhuo Mo. He had been with the sect for many years and knew that experts on Fanshu level were the ultimate power for the sect. Had Xian Kong Temple felt that they were a threat to the existence of the temple? He felt slightly conflicted. He desired to fight against Xian Kong Temple, but he knew that the two Fanshu were a big trouble. Zhuo Mo's gaze suddenly landed on Bihan. How many Fanshu does Xian Kong Temple have? Bihan stilled but quickly reacted. 5, one left to travel 30 years ago and has not returned. One is still in death seclusion. One was on a mission by the sect leader 10 years ago and has not returned. There are only these two left. Zhuo Mo's expression eased and he said, in other words, they can only send these two Fanshu. Thinking, Zhuo Mo asked, if I flee, will these two Fanshu meet up with Jiangzhe? Bihan shook his head. No. Zhuo Mo was very surprised at the certainty in Bihan's answer. Why? If they meet up with Jiangzhe, wouldn't their chance of victory increase? Fanshu can also die, Bihan said coolly. Zhuo Mo immediately understood. Yes, while a Fanshu was powerful, they could still die. If a powerful battalion did not care about losses, they might be able to kill a Fanshu Xiuzhe. Xian Kong Temple did not lack battalions, and would not risk their Fanshu experts on the battlefield. So the mission this time was an assassination. Zhuo Mo also understood why Xian Kong Temple would send two Fanshu. He had killed Marshal Yu. In the eyes of Xian Kong Temple, he was someone that could threaten Fanshu. Xian Kong Temple could not afford to lose any Fanshu. Zhuo Mo's eyes lit up. He suddenly found that there might be a chance. Xian Kong Temple would not know that someone would have warned him about their assassination mission. After thinking for a long time, Zhuo Mo raised his head and confidence came back to his face. I have an idea. Under the ground, Wei Xing gripped the hilt of the black sword and stopped his breathing. He quickly became like a piece of rock and all signs of life faded from him. Damn it, we lost him again, one person swore. Are we going to keep chasing? Another asked weakly with a threat of fear in his voice. Of course, if we don't, we will all die. But if we catch up to him, we will also die. The group became silent. No, if this continues, we will all die. Then what do we do? Wait. Wait. Wait for Lord to send out a kill warrant. Just as he finished speaking, one person said joyfully, kill warrant, the Lord sent out a kill warrant. This time, he's done for. The person speaking sighed in relief. Yes, he's over. The other people also sighed. When the footsteps vanished, Wei Xing emerged out of the soil and a hint of confusion flashed through his eyes. A kill warrant? He shook his head and didn't think about it. He found a hidden cave, set up some alarm Jinji and entered meditation. 10 continuous days of battle had exhausted his Ling power and mind, both were on the verge of collapse. If it wasn't that his mentality was as strong as steel, he would have fallen a long time ago. On the second day, he opened his eyes, and a hint of joy flashed across them. He had a breakthrough. After recuperating a few more days in the cave and his energies recovered to peak condition, he stood up. Taking out the Jia map jade scroll, he found his bearing and then flew in a direction. He didn't know what the kill warrant was. He didn't know that that kill warrant was causing a storm in the 100 Savage realm. What? They suddenly sped up. Marshal Hao was slightly surprised. They didn't change their destination. No, the middle-aged man said. It seems that they have already detected it. Marshal Hao did not speak. He was deep in thought. A moment later, he raised his head. It seems that Xiao Mo Gu already knows who their enemy is. Oh, have our people stopped the harassment? Stop the harassment? The middle-aged person was surprised. Isn't that just? It's nothing. Marshal Hao sneered. We aren't Xian Kong Temple subordinates, we don't need to give them too much face. Xian Kong Temple probably won't have an easy time in this fight. The middle-aged man didn't understand why father would say such a thing. Xiao Mo Gu is really daring. A hint of admiration flashed through Marshal Hao's eyes. Why this direction? Zhuo Mo asked in confusion to Pu Yao and Wei. He, Tsing Lianer, and Agui, were furiously flying forward. In order to avoid the scouts along the way, they did not ride Mo steeds but flew on their own. Zhuo Mo had designed an extremely daring plan. He decided to lure the two old Fanshu thieving baldies away in a huge circle. Just like how Xian Kong Temple were not willing to put their Fanshu in danger, Zhuo Mo was not willing to have these two thieving baldies enter the battlefield and affect their chances of victory. Zhuo Mo was full of confidence in Bihan and Gongsun Cha. As long as these two old thieving baldies did not attend the battle, Zhuo Mo believed they would win. If Gongsun Cha and Bihan defeated Jiangzhe, it would be enough to cause Xian Kong Temple to descend into chaos. If he could delay until that time, the two old thieving baldies would no longer have the time to chase him. They would have to go back to steady the sect and his predicament would be resolved. The crux of this strategy was a race of time. On his end, the longer that he could drag this out, the more beneficial it would be. The other side with Gongsun Cha and Bihan, the faster they defeated Jiangzhe, the safer he would be. If he had to face the two old Fanshu thieving baldies head-on, Zhuo Mo definitely did not have a chance. But if he was playing hide-and-seek, Swa Mo did not fear it. With Pu Yao and Wei present, these two cunning people, Swa Mo thought that the two old thieving baldies wouldn't stand a chance. In order to lure the two old thieving baldies to take the bait, Swa Mo had deliberately left behind a trace of Shen power. Last time, the four great sects with Lin Qian as the leader had made such a big ruckus for the great peace Mo steal. Swa Mo knew that these people had an obsession with Shen power. He hadn't thought that having just stepped out of the camp, Pu Yao and Wei had Swa Mo flying in this direction. Swa Mo muttered inside, there was a conspiracy. Chapter 665, Pu Yao and Wei's conspiracy for Fanshu Shouja. Sneaking into the guarded camp was slightly troublesome, but if the other was not on guard, the chance of success was very high. The other had not been on guard. The two entered the camp without any resistance. A moment later, Dai Tao's expression became strange. He's not here. Ji Zheng did not show any expression. Dai Tao's attire was like that of an average xiu. People would find it hard to deduce what kind of shouja he was based on his attire. Ji Zheng was the exact opposite. Bald head, prayer beads, monk robes, he looked like a stereotypical Dainana xiu at first glance. The only thing that would cause people to take notice was that granite and icy face. It didn't have the harmonious air of Diana xiu. Instead it was cold and murderous, inspiring fear in the onlooker. Dai Tao was not from Xian Kong Temple. He was a roaming xiu. In order to break through to Fanshu, he had joined Xian Kong Temple. Xian Kong Temple's enormous resources and the great and famed collection of records had been of great help to him. He had successfully entered Fanshu, and became one of the elders of Xian Kong Temple. Ji Zheng was a true disciple of Xian Kong Temple. His parents had been disciples of Xian Kong Temple. He had grown up from birth in the temple. Outstandingly talented, he had been one of the disciples that the sect had focused their resources in raising. He himself was a cultivation fanatic and didn't have any interest in other matters. His mind was pure, and his cultivation path could be said to have been a smooth one without facing any major obstacles. Ji Zheng suddenly turned his head and walked into a corner. When he stepped onto the grass, that emotionless face changed for the first time. His eyes lit up. Shen power. Shen power. Dai Tao paused. When he walked to this place, his expression also changed to shock. Such pure Shen power. Does this boy have a complete Shen power inheritance? We chase him. Ji Zheng said decisively. Dai Tao hesitated. If they took the chance to kill Bihan, it would be a destructive blow against the enemy. However, he quickly suppressed this thought. In comparison, Xiao Mo Ge's Shen power inheritance was more attractive to him. Shen power inheritance. His mind heated slightly. If he was able to obtain the Shen power inheritance, maybe he could enter dashing level. Dashing. The highest level of cultivation and representing the strongest power in the world. How many years had it been since a dashing expert appeared? Dai Tao was actually satisfied with having reached Fanshu. However, he understood that without Xian Kong Temple, he would not have been able to do it. Consequently, he hadn't had any thoughts about the distant dashing stage. But this Shen power inheritance that suddenly appeared now gave him a thread of hope. Xian Kong Temple had studied Shen power for a long time. Dai Tao was one of the most powerful in the temple and had participated in the process. While Xian Kong Temple had not produced any results up until now, Shen power had been found to be a higher power than Ling power. For normal shouja, this was nothing. The cultivation of Ling power itself was already an endeavor vast as the ocean and endless as the sky. But for shouja like them that had almost reached the top level of the shouja system, it was tempting. The two quickly disappeared. Multiple breaths later, a figure slowly formed from empty space near where the two had been. It was Luo Li. 2 hours later. Xiao Mo Ge's battalions started to mobilize. Full speed ahead. Now tell me why we are going in this direction. Sua Mo glowered at Pu Yao and Wei. Aha, GE isn't so easy to fool. You two lowly cunning, shady, and shameless people. Do not think you can do such unspeakable things behind my back. Sua Mo's speech was both urgent and fast. However, the two in front of him clearly would not be defeated by words of this degree. It is a good thing. Wei smiled harmlessly. It is not so easy to avoid Fanshu. Threat. Pu Yao was definitely threatening him. However, the thick-skinned and black-hearted Xiao Mo Gu was immune to threats like this. He sneered. Everyone's on the same boat, what's the use in scaring me? You guys can escape if I don't. This time, it really is a good thing. Wei still had a friendly smile. Sua Mo glanced at Pu Yao. He wondered inside, this guy hadn't argued with him today, it wasn't normal. What? Sua Mo responded. Actually, in the past, we did leave behind some things. Wei hesitated but still spoke. Sua Mo stilled but then his eyes flashed like Jingshi. Whoa whoa whoa. Jiangshi. Oh, Mabe. Or the legendary 1,000-year treasure hoard. You were so strong in the past, the riches you gathered, oh. Rich. Ha. In the sea of consciousness, Sua Mo danced excitedly. Riches. Wei's expression was dazed. I knew he would be like this, Pu Yao said expressionlessly. After being calm for a moment, Pu Yao's tendons visibly bulged up. His forced expression of calm became twisted. There seemed to be an angry fire burning in his bloody pupil that increased. His teeth ground like millstones. He was clearly angry to his limit. It isn't riches. Sua Mo stopped. His face was full of disappointment as he muttered, not riches, that really disappoints me. Ah, you two were famous people in the past, to be poor to this point, tsk. Shut up. Pu Yao's anger that he had been suppressing immediately erupted as he shouted, you idiot. Dumbass. You stupid idiot that only knows to laze about, eating and waiting to die. Such humiliation. I actually have a student like you. This is such a great humiliation. What do you understand? Ah. The world. We were fighting for the world, dominating in all directions. Our desires, wishes, how can you who only knows money understand? The furious Pu Yao ignited the flames in Sua Mo's sea of consciousness. The dark red fires filled the sky and Pu Yao was like a furious god. Sua Mo's face was puzzled. He looked at Pu Yao in the sky that was pointing down and swearing at him. He murmured unconsciously, what is this? The light words caused the flames to completely still and Pu Yao's shouts to be choked off. Pu Yao was like a deflated ball that flew down without a sound. The fires that burned disappeared. Pu Yao and Wei abandoned the puzzled Sua Mo and went to whisper to each other. Wei said calmly, I just knew that this occasion would be the rest. Pu Yao's anger roiled. A waste of all this. To have encountered such a master without any ambition. They are really pitiful, the most pitiful in history. Wei hit the target with one sentence. Ambition? It isn't the first time that he was just eating and waiting for death. Pu Yao was discontent. All the things that we had done, so much preparation to leave for. Wei said calmly, we do not have any other choices. Pu Yao gritted. The great. Am going to die of anger. No. Humph, how can he benefit without paying a price? Wei looked at Pu Yao who was about to go off again and said calmly, he probably doesn't want this benefit. Pu Yao seemed to think of something and snickered. Ha, that isn't up to him. Wei heard something. What do you plan on doing? Pu Yao didn't answer and asked in response, what kind of person do you think he is? Wei did not hesitate. Lazy, eats and waits for death, dislikes work, greedy, thick-skinned, and black-hearted. Pu Yao thought as he asked, when will he ever actually put effort into doing something? Wei said directly, when there is no other choice and he has to do it. Oh, in other words, if we want him to do something, this matter has to leave him no avenue of retreat, no choice left, and he has to do it. Pu Yao concluded. You mean? Pu Yao's bloody pupil flashed with an unusual light. He. Wei nodded. Understood. How about it? Pu Yao glanced at Wei. Do it. Wei was brisk. Are you now unfamiliar with what has to be done? I have to familiarize myself. It really makes one's blood boil. Suddenly, Zuo had a bad feeling. Then he saw Pu Yao and Wei, who had been whispering off to the side, turn to look at him and grin darkly. Zuo shuddered. Were those two planning something else? Zuo thought. The two had already turned around and did not seem to intend to pay any more attention to him. Zuo suppressed the impulse to ask and left his sea of consciousness. He would not get any answers. It would be safer to stay away from these two. Of course, most importantly, it wasn't riches. After hearing that it wasn't riches, Zuo immediately lost interest in what Pu Yao was talking out. He was very wealthy now, anti-dragon claw, 3,000 threads of worry, these two were top treasures. He had also been enriched after killing Marshal Yes Group. The black-hearted treasure coins, the blue carp sword, all of them were powerful Mo weapons. There were numerous materials, dozens of Mo skills that were all first tier. So Zuo didn't have any interest in the property that Pu Yao and Wei spoke of. Also, he knew that the things these two offered were not easy to take. Right now, he only wanted to go to Nether Springs Jia, investigate his origins, and settle his scores. After doing that, he would manage his own territories, make Jingshi, and live a carefree existence. Since he now had an enormous territory that was enough for people to have pretty good days, he had not failed them, Zuo thought happily. Zuo quickly shrugged off the scenes of the beautiful future and recovered his calmness. The fight right now was directly related to their future. If they won, they would jump into the position as one of the strongest battalions in the world. No one would easily start a fight with them. They would have an open road and they would push Xian Kong Temple down into a place where they would not be able to get back up from. But if they lost? No, they definitely could not lose. For Xian Kong Temple, this was a battle they could not lose. For Zuo's group, this was also a battle they could not lose. This was a battle that they could not retreat from nor avoid. Zuo became alert and started to ponder if his plans had any weaknesses. At this time, Zuo was focusing all his effort and gave off endless spirit. His belly full of black water was not willing to stay hidden. He had to make some trouble for Xian Kong Temple. Chapter 666, The World Stunned. Really, what Xiuzha dares to be so arrogant? They have come to our Mo territories to show off. It is a sword show, a vicious one that has killed more than 1,000 people. More than 1,000. They are just boasting. Do you think that killing Mo is like killing chickens? You don't understand. For an expert, it is easier to kill people than to kill chickens. Che, even the strongest expert is nothing in front of a battalion. True, but think about it. A sword show has come to our territories. If we have to mobilize a battalion to deal with just one sword show, tell me, isn't it embarrassing? Ah, a little bit. What about our Mo experts? Have they all died? How can they let the Xiuzha show off on our land? He won't be able to do it for much longer. The kill order has been sent down. It is really a tragedy about that Jia master. He had surrounded the other, yet the other had managed to flee, especially after his subordinates were mostly killed. This guy is a joke now. Ha! He surrounded the other yet let the other run away. This bad? It really is embarrassing. Ha! That sword show better not come here, otherwise. The mo that spoke suddenly stopped. He was looking straight ahead and stood motionless. What? His partner was slightly puzzled and instinctively looked in that direction as well. He was immediately stunned. A figure holding a sword slowly approached in the horizon. Wei Sheng looked at the city in front of him. He gripped the black sword in his hand. There was no fear on his face. He ignored the gazes filled with hatred and enmity as he walked straight towards the city gates. Did you hear? That sword Xiao has come here. He wants to challenge the experts of this Jia in search of a defeat. TSK, look how dominant his words are, in search of a defeat. Is this guy crazy? Crazy? He's very smart. He made a big fuss and will only fight with you in the open. What, you don't dare to accept this? He has offended everyone with this action, but who can swallow the anger if someone challenged them directly? If they cannot defeat this guy in honest open combat, they won't have any face. It would be extremely shameful for anyone to do something from the shadows now. However, this sword Xiao won't be able to escape now. He can only keep winning. If he loses, he will die. His courage to force such a situation is admirable. TSK, this is going to attract attention. I hadn't thought that even Xiaozhe would have heroes like this. The news that a sword Xiao was challenging the MO experts spread like wildfire. Those who heard it for the first time almost didn't dare to believe the years. The history of hatred between Xiaozhe and MO could not be narrated in 10 whole days. Now a sword Xiao had run into the MO territories and publicly challenged MO experts. It wasn't that Xiaozhe never sneaked into the MO territories, but that every person who did so would disguise themselves as MO and be careful in fear they would be discovered. Something like a person publicly entering the MO territories along and challenging all experts had never happened before. Mad, arrogant, doesn't have a measure of himself. All kinds of judgments, the most evil curses, they came from the mouths of people. Everyone was waiting to mock him and see how the MO experts would tear this horrid sword Xiao into pieces. In the first match, the sword Xiao won. The MO watching were slightly shocked. In the second match, the sword Xiao won. The MO almost didn't believe their eyes. In the third match, the sword Xiao won. The MO started to quiet. 10 matches with no defeats. Wei Xing stood on the stage and gazing down proudly as he gripped his sword. The MO that were below the stage had ashen faces. It was completely silent. No MO had the bravery to get onto the stage. Wei Xing became famous. On the second day, the result of this battle spread into every corner of the 100 Savage Realm as though it had wings. 100 Savage Realm was in a furor. In the history of the MO, they had never appeared so disheveled. Facing the gazes of enmity in the surroundings, Wei Xing's sword heart was unaffected. He knew that this was the start. The further he went, the stronger the experts would be. However, he had finally escaped the endless pursuit of enemies. He had thought for a long time before deciding on his plan of action, publicly exposing himself in such an attention-catching manner. Wei Xing was not cunning, but he was not a stupid person. He knew that his arrogant actions would infuriate the MO, but this was also his goal. When all gazes of the 100 Savage Realm gathered on him, those methods in the dark could not be used. The MO would not accept that. There was only one way that would not cause them to lose face, defeating him openly and fairly. The more influence this matter had, the safer he was. But at the same time, his opponents would become stronger and he would be in more danger. However, he did not fear it at all. In his view, the stronger the opponent, the more it could refine his sword essence. He walked step by step towards Nether Springs Jia, and refined his sword essence. No matter how far he walked, it was like he always had his back against a precipice. A situation with no hope. When Wei Xing used this kind of decisiveness to challenge all of the MO territories, how could the world not be stunned? Swa Mo, Agoe, and Tsing Lianer were carefully hiding. Pu Yao really was skilled in committing devious acts. He had given over several methods to hide and conceal their tracks. Along the way, he had occasionally pointed out to Zhuo Mo what they needed to pay attention to. Pu Yao's great experience was completely shown. Zhuo Mo suspected that this guy had frequently done things that could not be seen in the light of day. Zhuo Mo and the others constantly changed directions and would purposefully leave behind some marks to confuse their pursuers along the way. Dai Tao and Ji Zheng were to be pitted for the hardship they encountered. The two had high cultivation but they were not skilled in this field. Dai Tao was a roaming Xiao to start but his luck had been good and he had entered an outer sect of Xian Kong Temple very early on. He usually taught sect disciples. Ji Zheng's experience in this area was almost zero. The number of times he had stepped outside of the gates of Xian Kong Temple could be counted on the fingers. His experience with the world was almost nothing. After Zhuo Mo had led them in circles for 3 days, the two finally understood that cultivation strength could not solve all problems. The two immediately sent a message back to the sect but the two had not discovered that Zhuo Mo knew of their presence. Zhuo Mo's actions seemed very suspect but could also mean that he had some secret aim. If there wasn't a secret goal, why would Zhuo Mo leave the battalion at this time? The news that the two of them had come was a well-kept secret. Not many knew. In their minds, there was no possibility of this matter having leaked. When Xian Kong Temple received the information, they quickly acted. A middle-aged person that was short and of a lowly appearance stood respectfully in front of the two and didn't dare to even breathe. Behind the middle-aged person were 5 young disciples. However, these young disciples were slightly excited. These two in front of them were of ancestor level in Xian Kong Temple. If they served the two well, the elder was happy and might bestow them something that would be enough for them to live off for their entire life. This kind of chance was something that could not be found by chance. What are you called? Are you skilled in tracking? Dai Tao asked. This one is called Hui Bao, and knows some tracking spells. The middle-aged man answered nervously. Dai Tao saw Hui Bao's nervousness and nodded. Do you know the mission this time? This one does not know, the sect only said for this one to attend to the instructions of the two elders, Hui Bao carefully answered. We are pursuing a great criminal of the sect. However, this person is extremely cunning. Your mission is to find him, Dai Tao said. Yes. Hui Bao hurried to acknowledge. This place has tracks he left behind. Start here. Finishing, Dao Tai went to the side and closed his eyes to rest. Hui Bao laid on the ground. He sniffed and then closed his eyes. His right hand suddenly lit up. The light quickly scanned the ground. He took a handful of powder from his 100 treasures pouch. Moments later, the powder disappeared into the air and 3 pairs of faint footprints appeared on the previously blank ground. Dai Tao was slightly surprised but he did not interrupt. Hui Bao, who had been extremely subservient before, seemed to be a completely different person now with a calm expression and confidence. Hui Bao carefully inspected the footprints and concluded after a few moments, there are 3 people, one is male, the other 2 are female. Dai Tao thought a moment, and the intelligence dossier the sect had given them before they came to mind. He quickly deduced who the other 2 women were. Xiao Mo Gu had 2 women with him, one with an ugly appearance and one that was beautiful. The ugly one was of mysterious origins but the beautiful one was the daughter of a little Jia master in a remote part of the territories. Dai Tao nodded. This Hui Bao had some skill as expected. Do you know which direction then went in? Dai Tao couldn't resist asking. Darren, please wait for a moment. Hui Bao beckoned at a disciple. The disciple hurried forward and handed over a beast service card. This beast service card was just half the size of a palm and engraved with a small beast. Moments later, a strange beast appeared, a fluffy furred puppy. What was most attention-catching was its pair of glass-like eyes were unusually bright. Dai Tao's eyes lit up. Is it a glass-eyed canine? Glass-eyed canes were just 4th grade Ling beast, but it was not easy to raise them. What was most unique about the glass-eyed canines were that its eyes were extremely powerful and it could see many things that normal people could not. It was also highly intelligent and liked by hunters. Dai Tao had seen it mentioned before in a record and so recognized it with a glance. Darren is wise. Hui Bao hurriedly flattered. The glass-eyed canine just out of Hui Bao's arms. The glass-like eyes suddenly lit up. It looked around and then suddenly shot in one direction. Darren, that direction. Hui Bao hurriedly shouted. He then chased after the glass-eyed canine. Dai Tao was overjoyed and followed tightly after. Ji Jing followed expressionlessly, but his movements were not slow. The two only thought of one thing at this moment, obtaining the Shen power inheritance. Even though they did not communicate, both of them decided that they couldn't have the Shen power inheritance land in other people's hands. At this time, something suddenly happened. Chapter 667, Nasty. The glass-eyed canine running ahead of them suddenly wailed. He faltered and tumbled on the ground. Hui Bao was shocked and hurried next to the glass-eyed canine. The glass-eyed canine was laying lifelessly on the ground. Hui Bao's face immediately turned white and a word flashed through his mind, trap. The other had set up traps along the road. Hui Bao immediately felt this was troublesome. People would rarely set up traps when they were trying to escape. Only those experienced, cunning, and malicious experts would be so careful and so nasty. Expert. Hui Bao did not make a sound, but he straightened. Fighting spirit emanated from his short and low body. While his status in the temple was not high, he was still very proud of his skills. In these years, he had never failed before. What is it? Dai Tao looked at the glass-eyed canine and asked. The other has set a trap, Hui Bao said gravely. A hint of pain flashed through his eyes. It was not easy to raise a glass-eyed canine, and this was his only one. A trap? Dai Tao was shocked. Do they know that someone is following them? I'm not sure. Hui Bao shook his head. The power of a trap like this is not high. They are mostly used against Ling beasts. Experienced experts usually will set up traps like this behind them just in case. If they were actually prepared for pursuers, the trap would be more powerful. Dai Tao understood. What Hui Bao said was rational. But what he didn't know was that Zhua Mo knew that it would be Fanshu Xiuzhe that were chasing him. What traps could be effective against Fanshu? He gave up on those unrealistic ideas and targeted the Ling beasts that would appear. This was also Pu Yao's suggestion. Hui Bao's expression was serious as he beckoned to another disciple, give me the 10,000 lure disc. The disciple carefully presented a disc to Hui Bao. The disc was completely black and had been carved from an unknown black stone. It was covered in strange seal scripts. Hui Bao took the disc, bit his finger and drew a seal script on the disc. His expression was stern as he chanted. The motionlessly needle on the disc slowly started to move. Moments later, it stopped and pointed in a direction. A direction that was the complete opposite of the one before. As expected of an expert. Hui Bao's eyes became even brighter. Xiao Mo Guan Jiangzhe, the famed battle general of Xian Kong Temple, were going to fight to the death. Such explosive news created a great wave in the 100 Savage realm in a flash. While Jiangzhe was not as powerful as Gu Yongdao, he had been the first battle general to defeat and conquer Mo Jia. Xiao Mo Ge's fame had skyrocketed up in this past while, defeating the Ming bandits and the Yu frontier guards. He also had a glorious record. This was truly a match of the strong against the strong. After the sky-splitting calamity, the Xiuzhe camp had successively achieved victories with many battle generals. On the other hand, the Mo had been unable to muster an appropriate response. The major factions of Mo maintained their silence. They naturally had their own considerations, but for the Mo people, they felt shamed. But they could not argue against the truth. The battle between Xiao Mo Gu and Jiang Zhe immediately attracted the eyes of all of the 100 Savage realm. Xiao Mo Gu's reputation had grown and he was clearly the representative of the new generation of battle generals. However, in the eyes of the public, he still lacked a major victory. Defeating the Ming bandits and Marshal Yu was enough to make a splash in the Mo territories. But a victory against those outsiders was even more important in the eyes of the Mo people. A long sequence of defeats and retreats caused the Mo people to have a longing desire for victory. Almost all of the 100 Savage of the Dark was hoping that Xiao Mo Gu could defeat Jiang Zhe. Victory, only victory would count. The gaze of the 100 Savage of the Dark gathered on Xiao Mo Gu's battalion. When the news spread, the route that Xiao Mo Gu's battalion took immediately became free of obstacles. The major factions along the route moved out of the way. They even enthusiastically offered all kinds of help, free supplies, resources to recruit more soldiers. This battle was exaggerated to the point that it became, in many people's eyes, a battle of life and death that could decide the fates of Mo and Xiuzhe. After the repeated losses, the desire of the Mo toward victory started to burn under the influence of the spark that Sui Mo through Utmo innately liked to fight. Their desire to fight was something that Xiuzhe found hard to understand. Many Mo warriors rushed in from all directions in hope that they could participate in this battle. The number was tens of times greater than the previous wave that had come. Multiple Mo marshals publicly expressed their support of Xiao Mo Gu. Intelligence of all kinds flowed and gathered on Gongsun Cha and Bihan's hands. At the same time, Jiang Zhe, who had wanted to focus on preparing for the battle, found that the number of scouts in the surroundings had suddenly increased and small-scale skirmishes also increased. The Mo in his surroundings had seen the chance to make things difficult for Xian Kong Temple. We cannot defeat you, but we could harass you and not give Jiang Zhe the chance to prepare in peace. Many little factions teamed up and went to harass Jiang Zhe's forces. Many people started to talk about how the Xiuzhe had hunted Yaomua in Bloody Sky Metropolis Jie. They called on the Mo to hunt Xiu. Some Mo even called on Yao to ally together to fight Xian Kong Temple. The 100 Savage of the Dark was extremely busy. The affair turned into a wildfire in a flash. The pressure of Xian Kong Temple increased greatly. Sui Mo, Ague, and Sing Lianer were walking on the street. They had completely changed their appearances and no one could recognize them on the street. The mirage of Xiao Mo Gu and Marshal Ye's fight had spread through the entire 100 Savage of the Dark, and it would be trouble if they were recognized. But at this time, Sui Mo was feeling smug. As the mastermind behind this string of events, he naturally felt smug about the situation. He had been the one to spread the news about so-called fight between Xiao Mo Gu and Jiang Zhe. But he hadn't thought that the Mo would react so fiercely, and the response was beyond his expectations. His original intention was to make things difficult for Xian Kong Temple. The present situation was very beneficial for Gongsun Cha and the others. They now had popular support, the advantage of home territory. This fight attracted the attention of all Mo. No one would dare to act against them in fear of the world's anger. Just how much support Xiao Mo Gu had could be seen by Marshal Hao's public action. He had been the first to publicly support Xiao Mo Gu. Even more detailed and accurate Jia maps, guides that were willing to fight, those were all advantageous to Gongsun Cha. The Mo Jia occupied by Jiang Zhe's forces would also rebel when they heard the news. While all this could not overwhelm Jiang Zhe, it would take up a bit of his strength. An advantage was built up slowly like this. At this time, no one doubted Xiao Mo Gu's identity. Was it a joke? How could a Xiuzhe fight against Jiang Zhe? Of course he is a Mo, a pure male Mo, only they would have this daring. What? He knows Yao arts. Yao. You dare to fight for Xiao Yi with us? You don't want to live. Hearing this, Sui Mo smiled. He asked Pu Yao, would those two old thieving baldies have lost our trail? Thinking about what he had set up along the way, even he felt uncertain. Nasty, too nasty. Pu Yao's endless tricks really broadened his knowledge. He was now worried that the two old thieving baldies had lost his trail and would return to make trouble for Gongsun Cha and the others. That would not good. One of the key points of this battle was that he would be able to keep the two old thieving baldies occupied. Do not underestimate Xian Kong Temple. Pu Yao snorted at Zuo Mo's words. Hui Bao's face was covered in dust and had a terrible expression. Up until now, he had lost 6 Ling beasts. The number of Ling beasts he lost in the past 5 years was not as many as what he lost in this one day. The others' moves were not mainstream measures. There were some primitive and nasty setups that he could not guard against and he had continuously fallen for. If he wasn't experienced and unusually sensitive, he would have lost the trail a long time ago. But even so, he didn't have any confidence. The other definitely was more experienced than he was. Even more importantly, the other was nastier and more cunning than he was. The other had used uncanny traps, one interlocking with another, and every time, it was different. If the other's targets were people, he would have died long ago. In dealing with traps, what people fought with was not just technique but mental strength. Hui Bao knew that he had completely lost on that level. The only confidence he had was the 2 elders beside him. The 2 elders definitely would not watch as he was killed. Dai Tao's expression was also unwell. He saw Hui Bao's disheveled state. He had actually been pushed into such a panic by a junior. He was not in a good mood. On the other hand, Ji Zheng had been expressionless from beginning to end as though he was not affected by the incidents at all. Hui Bao suddenly exhaled. His gaze landed on the distant city. It's here. Dai Tao turned to ask Hui Bao. Yes. Darren. Hui Bao said respectfully. They are inside this city. But what? There are many people in the city and it is hard to pinpoint them. Hui Bao trailed off. There is no need for such trouble. Dai Tao smiled. Finishing, he looked towards Ji Zheng. Please, Shixiang, force them out. Ji Zheng nodded expressionlessly and suddenly flew into the sky. He looked down at the sky from the sky. People were as small as ants. Ji Zheng raised a palm upright and shouted clearly, Ma. In this moment, the air within hundreds of li suddenly froze. A terrifying presence pressed down towards the city below. The entire city seemed to freeze in that moment. People instinctively looked towards the figure in the sky. Terror uncontrollably possessed every corner of their body. Their hands and feet felt cold and their minds were blank. A Diana light swept the entire city like a wave. When the Diana light lit up, Zuo Mo's expression suddenly changed. Damn it! He hadn't expected the other would not care at all and challenge the entire city. The Diana light gave him a feeling of extreme danger. Chapter 668, Ji Zheng. The Diana light was soundless and serene like a ripple in the water. Detecting danger, Zuo Mo shouted, scatter. Finishing, he shot up and hurriedly flew out of the city. Tseng Lianer understood and immediately flew in another direction. Zuo Mo turned around and found a Gui following tightly behind him. He suddenly panicked. A Gui, we need to run in different directions. A Gui did not seem to hear and continued to follow him closely. Zuo Mo felt both moved and panicked. If they split up, the two would chase after him. A Gui and Tseng Lianer would then have a chance to escape. But he hadn't thought that a Gui would be so stubborn that she would not listen to his words. That caused his plan to fail completely. He then saw a smear of red out of the corner of his eye. It was Tseng Lianer coming back. Tseng Lianer was coming back. Motherfucker. Zuo Mo was both panicked and angry. These people that did not listen to direction. He felt slightly moved by their loyalty. Zhuemo was not surprised that a Gui had followed him, but Zhuemo was very surprised that Tsing Lianer had also turned around. He was the enemy's target. Tsing Lianer had given up her best chance to escape and chose to fight alongside them. This required great courage. All in. At this time, any other words were extraneous. Zhuomo's spirits rose to a peak. He suddenly grabbed his legs and turned into a ball. He somersaulted in the air and his legs suddenly kicked into the air. Bam! It was as though he had pushed against a tangible but invisible block in the air. The wind gusted past him and the sound was explosive and clear. A thread of pain suddenly appeared on Zhuomo's face. Even though his mo physique was stronger now, it could not endure such a high-speed change in momentum. He had pushed off with enormous force. Using this enormous power, Zhuomo's body shot out in the opposite direction at an even faster speed to head towards Ji Zheng. His gaze was tightly locked onto Ji Zheng's eye-catching shiny bald head. He disliked thieving baldies the most. Zhuemo threw away all stray thoughts. Golden light flashed across his body and Shen power rippled. A Gui's body eerily disappeared and then she suddenly appeared in the air next to Zhuemo. Tsing Lianer was like a red gust of smoke. She wavered uncertainly and faint after images formed. The three's target was Ji Zheng. It had been a brief moment from the time they had made the decision to run away to the decision to turn back and attack. In the eyes of Dai Tao and the others, Zhuemo and the others running away was the normal response. They did not find it strange, but when the three suddenly switched to a counterattack, they were caught off guard. Xiuzhe of Fanshu level were of high status in any sect. They either roamed the world in search of rare and precious things, or they were in seclusion in search of a higher level. If a situation was not forced to the very end, the sect would not rely on such great power, much less in a top sect like Xian Kong Temple that had so many experts. It had been decades since the two had fought. Due to this, they were unprepared for the trio's escape turning suddenly into an attack. If this was a usual time, facing such a great difference in power, this bit of unpreparedness would not be of any effect. The two Fangsis minds were not affected by this. Their minds had been hardened and their confidence in their power had been engraved into their bones. They were overjoyed rather than shocked. If Zhuemo and the others chose to flee, they could only choose to chase Zhuemo and risk the other two escaping. Now the three had decided to stay. In the eyes of these two, it was like moths heading for the flame, seeking death. Ji Zheng snorted coldly. His upraised hand moved towards his other hand, his palms pressed together in a prayer position. His expression was solemn as he chanted. A golden lotus blossomed under his feet. Countless petals fell. A peaceful and serene presence that could permeate people's minds formed and an imperceptible murmur of chanting disturbed people's concentration. Zhuemo felt his rippling Shen power suddenly stop. Without being conscious of it, his fighting spirit weakened. He immediately felt fear. The old thieving baldy wasn't simple to have a weapon that could subdue people without a fight. If this was in the past, Zhuemo would have been greatly affected by the disturbance of the Dhyana chanting. But ever since he comprehended the steel text, his control over his Shen power was much greater even if it had not grown by much. Zhuemo protected his mind. The pure and burning Shen power furiously circulated through his body. When the flower petals that fell came near him, they would explode into fragments. At the same time, the soul-setting divine light that was sleeping in Zhuomo's body suddenly spun. Zhuemo immediately felt his body lighten and his mind relax. He hadn't thought that the soul-setting divine light would have such a use. Zhuemo was overjoyed and his spirits rose. That bald head in his field of view grew closer. Zhuemo couldn't help but howl. His arms reached outwards as though to embrace the shiny head. Countless golden lights flashed in the air and flooded towards his hands. In this moment, a thick and vast golden pillar suddenly formed in Zhuomo's curved arms at an astounding speed. On the golden pillar, there were golden crows that seemed to be alive as they cawed and flapped their wings. Hiss! A streak of crimson shot up along the golden pillar. Golden crow battering ram. At the same time, a cool crescent moon formed behind Xing Lianer's body. Compared to the small crescent of before, the moon was much broader this time. The crescent moon pointed directly at Ji Zheng as though it was a blade. Moon, moon, strike. The purple light in Agui's eyes grew and her body eerily disappeared into the air. Ji Zheng's expression changed slightly. The attacks of the three surpassed his expectations. His Diana heart that was still like that of a deep well-detected danger and ripples formed. But the disturbed Diana heart immediately calmed. Ji Zheng looked down as he chanted. Blinding golden light emanated from his body. In a flash, he was like those intimidating Buddhas covered in golden paint. Great authority Vajrapani Dhyana body. At the same time, the sutra characters on his kasaya seemed to come alive. Sounds of countless people chanting came from the kasaya and gathered into a vast ocean of Dhyana chanting. Golden characters flooded out of Ji Zheng's body and formed a sea of characters. Xian Kong Temple's 8th grade talisman, Sutra Si Kasaya. Suemo felt his vision blur. The sutra characters around Ji Zheng changed constantly. But Suemo was experienced in battle. While he was shocked, he was not panicked. The golden crow battering ram did not change direction and headed powerfully towards that golden sea. Xing Lianer immediately understood Suemo's intentions. She controlled the moon crescent to follow behind the golden crow battering ram and struck. When the golden crow battering ram hit the sea of sutra characters, the burning red flow along the pillar suddenly exploded. Everywhere it passed, the sutra characters started to burn as though they were made of paper. And having overcome the resistance, the golden crow battering ram smashed down. Dong! A deep sound exploded in people's minds. In the hundreds of li, everyone's minds shook. Those that were weaker felt restless and wanted to throw up. Zuomo's golden crow battering ram was like a great and heavy object that smashed through this sea of sutra characters. At this time, Ji Zheng suddenly raised his head and opened his eyes. It was like a Buddha opening his eyes, without joy nor sorrow, the aura of authority as great as the ocean. His hands moved apart and slowly slapped towards the golden crown battering ram coming towards him. The unstoppable golden crow battering ram was stopped by this seemingly normal movement. The palm that seemed to be smelted from golden liquid stopped that enormous golden crow battering ram completely. This all happened in a flash. Dai Tao hadn't thought that the trio's attacks would all be focused on Ji Zheng. But he did not panic. He had absolute confidence in Ji Zheng's strength. Ji Zheng Shixiang usually was secluded and only thought of dhyana cultivation. Outsiders would not know, but as another Fanshu of Xian Kong Temple, Dai Tao knew Ji Zheng Shixiang's strength better than other people. Ji Zheng Shixiang was stronger than he was. Ji Zheng Shixiang that was raised in Xian Kong Temple had a sturdier foundation from when he began cultivating. His accumulation at each level was much better. When this reached Fanshu, this advantage became evident. Dai Tao always held some admiration about this. Looking at Xiao Mo guest group concentrating their attacks on Ji Zheng Shixiang, he was not panicked and smiled coldly inside. They were seeking their own deaths. Shen power is only so. A thread of disappointment flashed across Ji Zheng's eyes. This golden crow battering ram was powerful, but it was far from the power that he thought it would have. Was the power of Shen power only so much? If that was the case, then this Shen power did not live up to its reputation. Just as this thought formed in Ji Zheng's mind, his eyes suddenly flickered. A cool light flashed along the golden crow battering ram and suddenly struck right in front of him. The light had been following tightly behind the golden crow battering ram and was hidden from view, concealed by the blinding golden light. Ji Zheng's Dhyana heart was steady, and when his thoughts shifted, he was able to respond. A handful of grey mist suddenly flew out of the beads hanging on his chest. When the cool moonlight struck the grey mist, it suddenly stilled. Among the grey mist, the cool crescent moon essence was left motionless. 8th grade talisman, mortal thought bead. This string of beads was forged from the common thoughts that he had excised from his mind through cultivation of his dhyana heart. It was connected to his mind and had great abilities. When he sat and chanted every day over decades, he would stroke them to prove his heart. Dai Tao looked interestedly at the fight between the two sides and showed no intentions of joining in. Up until now, Jijing Shixiang was at ease and the enemy had not managed to truly threaten him. Jijing Shixiang was usually proud. He was at the peak of his interest in fighting. If Dai Tao joined in, it would displease Jijing. Suddenly, the motionless golden crow battering ram started to shatter. Black crows suddenly flapped their wings and flew out of the golden crow battering ram. These completely black crows had wisps of flame on their toes. Their eyes were dark red, and there were 3 thin golden feathers on their foreheads that trembled slightly. Their wings spread and their dark red eyes were locked onto Jijing. For some reason Jijing suddenly felt slightly anxious. His attention was completely absorbed by these black crows and did not notice the strange dance-like movements that Sui Mo was making at this time. From his vantage point Dai Tao could see the strange movements Sui Mo was making. His arms were dancing like snakes, his body moving in a strange rhythm. These movements seemed senseless, but for some unknown reason, Dai Tao felt a chill rise from his feet. His expression changed and he blurted out. Shixiang, careful, that you're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.